IB Nation, welcome back to another episode of the Irish Breakdown Podcast. Happy Friday. You guys know what that means. It is the Friday free-for-all mailbag. We already have 36 questions starred, so we have a lot to cover today. Now, before we dive into it, if this does happen to be your first mailbag, friendly reminder is to make sure if you want your question or your comment set aside to let Brian and I know to answer it, make sure you put a little MB for mailbag or a little mailbox emoji. Now, as the show goes on, we tend to get more and more questions as different topics come up. So our goal is to try to get to as many as possible. But if you want to make sure that you do get your question answered, you can always put in a super chat that gets bumped to the top. And then we're going to answer it in the order or as close to the order as possible. Sometimes people like to front load a lot of things. So we want to make sure that we get to everybody's question, at least one. But Friday free-for-all mailbag. Ideally, we're sticking with Notre Dame college football topics, but from every now and then, especially with it being the offseason, we get the occasional food question, the occasional movie question. So, Brian, we have a
World War II questions. Not anymore. I think I've exhausted all of my World War II knowledge. Last couple, I'm like, I don't know about that one.
Well, no worries. We have a bunch of different questions to get to today. Like I said, we already have 36 set aside. So, without further ado, I think it's time to get going, Brian. What say you?
Hey, I'm ready to go, man. I'm absolutely ready to go. Let's get into Coach Bent. It's got a really interesting schedule question, so I think it's a good place to start.
Coach Bent 574. In a world where home and home neutral series were required, what are some opponent and site combinations you would love to see Notre Dame play?
That's a good one. We kind of talked about one of them the other day, Trev. We talked about like doing some sort of home and home, and I've talked about this in the past with TCU as well, but we talked about this with SMU the other day, where I'd like to see some sort of, okay, we'll play one game at our place, one game at your place, and one game in Dallas, where at the in Arlington at the where the Cowboys play. You want to do that with TCU or you want to do that with SMU, I would totally be fine with that. That would actually be something that would be very interesting to watch and to see. I'm trying to think of some others. I mean, I'm not a huge neutral site guy unless it's like I said, something like that where like it's an opponent I want to play. I want to get into a certain region and I don't necessarily care to play where their home field is. And that's kind of the issue with SMU is that's not exactly like a stadium where it's like, wow, this is a great stadium. You want to go down and play in. It's a smaller stadium and it only holds like 32,000 people. Notre Dame SMU is going to need more than 32,000 people in the stadium, So that's kind of where I was coming from on that one, Trevor, and why I felt like that one would be a little bit different. TCU Stadium is a little bigger. It's like 47,000, still small, but certainly bigger than what SMU has. I'm trying to think of some others. I mean, I don't know where. I don't want to play like an SEC team in Atlanta. I don't like that stadium. And maybe it's just because where the media sits, it's such a bad angle that I don't really appreciate it, how good of a stadium it is. But it just didn't have a great atmosphere. We were down there in Atlanta. I'm sure it was different from the title game. But so as far as a regular season game, it wasn't a real, there just wasn't a lot of juice in there when Notre Dame played Georgia Tech there. But, I think the Superdome kind of brings some interesting tradition. So, that's kind of something I kind of liked about playing Georgia. There's some little bit of history there. Notre Dame doesn't have a ton of history in the Sugar Bowl, but a little bit. And I think they've beaten their last two of their last three Sugar Bowls. They beat an SEC team. Of course, they lost the Sugar Bowl in 2006 to LSU, but I believe their last three Sugar Bowls were after the 91 season when they beat Florida. And then I believe it was after the 2006 season when they lost to LSU. And then this past year, when they beat Georgia. So I'm trying to think of some different ones. I've said before, I don't know that I like Oklahoma. Oh, this is one I thought of before, a home and home with Oklahoma and then a neutral site game at Arrowhead. I've brought that up in the past. I think that'd be really cool, or maybe you do like a home and home with Texas and you have a neutral site there, kind of like it's not technically in the middle because they're both kind of going, but you know what I mean? It's still kind of in the middle I thought something like that would be cool. I don't like playing Colorado and Denver would be cool, but I don't know that I'd want to do a home and home with Colorado and then also do there. I'd kind of want to say maybe a home and a neutral, get them at home, and then you play them in Denver. But I'm trying to think of some different ones, Trevor. I don't know that there's a lot of those that I've really thought a whole lot about when it comes to who I'd want to play in a neutral field. The home and homes I get, but who would I want to play in a neutral field? Like I don't know what playing like Tennessee. I've always said I would like to play Tennessee as an SEC sort of rival. I don't know that there's a neutral field that really gives you much of anything, unless you wanted to say, hey, look, you're going to play a game in Cincinnati, where the Bengals play or something. But I don't know what that really does for you. It's not like Notre Dame needs to get and play a game in Cincinnati for the Catholic school kids to want to go to Notre Dame. They're already kind of doing well there anyway. So I don't know if there's any that pop in your head, Trev. But Coach, I'd have to really think through this one, and maybe while Trev's answering, I'm going to look through some different, just kind of look through teams and think if any pop in my head is where I'd like to actually play a neutral site game against somebody.
Yeah, Coach, it's a really good question. To be honest, I don't have a preference of opponents for home and homes. Selfishly, I would like a Notre Dame game to be played in Lucas Oil. I live down here, and I've never had the benefit of saying, I can just drive 10 minutes to go watch Notre Dame play.
Because you were still probably home when they played. You were still in high school, when they played Purdue in 2014. That's right. So I would like one at Lucas Oil. It could be somebody from the Midwest, maybe the Purdue or the IU game or something, but I would like one in Indianapolis. It's a great city to host. There's a lot going on, so I would like it. Where was the one? So if Notre Dame would have been better in 2021, you could have got to watch the national championship game where you live now.
Yep,
that'd be nice. Do you know if it's coming back at all there?
It's probably in the rotation down the road. The last big football event I went to was the Big Ten Championship. I didn't go to the game, but we went out downtown to watch the games. We walked into a bar, it's just a sea of Michigan fans, and I think I was there for like 25 minutes and I went home.
So, I'd have had to be out of there.
Yeah, it was, especially because they handled Iowa. And so I was like, I'm going to just leave. This isn't my scene, not tonight.
Yeah, where's the title's it's in Miami this year, right? So this year's in Miami. 2026 season is in Las Vegas. 2027's in New Orleans. Tampa's the next year, and then back to Miami. So that's the next group of games. That's an issue that I have. Is it's way too southern. If you look at it, like not obviously the Southwest, because actually even San Francisco, but like the exception of the Las Vegas game, which is out west, the most northern you'll play other than that one game is Indianapolis is in Atlanta. And I understand it's the weather and all that, but I'd still like to see more games played up north. I just weather's football. Part of football is weather, man. And there's enough dome stadiums to play one in Detroit, play one in Indy, play more in Indy than once every 10 years. So you're getting two in Miami in a 4-year stretch. Why? And yeah, whatever. Anyway. All right, Trev, let me think I'm just kind of going through here. I'll tell you a team who I'd love to play on the road, not a neutral site game, is Army. I'd still love to go watch just one game against them at West Point. Yeah, I'm looking at this, Trev. I don't know that there's a whole lot of places that I'd care about. Hey, let's get a home and get this neutral site game. I mean, we've seen them play Syracuse at MetLife. That's fine if they wanted to do something like that with Syracuse. But I mean, Syracuse halftime gives up their home game anyway to play there.
Yeah.
They didn't in 2022, but when they played them in 2016, they gave up their home game so that they could play at MetLife and make more money. I don't really care about playing another game at Fenway. I don't really care about playing Boston College where the Patriots play. Whatever. I don't know. I'm just looking at these teams. I don't know where I'd care to play Miami or Florida State on a neutral field. Those I don't know if there's anything like that where I would care about playing a home and home, because I kind of think there's some level of attraction to, if you're going to play on a neutral field, there needs to be something relevant to why you're playing there. You know, it makes sense to play one of the Dallas, one of SMU or TCU in Dallas, but playing Oklahoma maybe in Kansas City, or playing Missouri at Arrowhead or something like that. But I don't know that I care about scheduling a series in Missouri. But just, I don't a lot of the Southern teams. I don't really know that any of those really interest me a whole lot, other than, playing someone in the SEC at the Superdome. I'd say play LSU at the Superdome, but that hasn't worked out super great for them recently when they play neutral site games at the Superdome. Yeah. So, but I mean, if I'm going to play LSU, I don't know that I care about scheduling a home and home with LSU. So, yeah,
be cool to watch Notre Dame play in the Rose Bowl, like the Rose Bowl stadium, not the bowl game. I mean, I wouldn't mind if it was a bowl game, but I think there was a missed opportunity this year with Stanford. But the last time Notre Dame played in the Rose Bowl in the regular season was 2007 UCLA.
Yeah.
So
won that game, surprisingly.
Sure did. Mo Crum had the game of his life.
Oh, gosh, yes.
So
their offense did nothing. What's funny is everybody's like, they lost because of that quarterback. And I'm like, that guy spent like a decade in the NFL. Their backup quarterback, the Bethel Thompson kid, spent like a decade in the NFL. It's hilarious. But you could just schedule UCLA as for home and home for that. Like, I don't know, you could say maybe if you wanted to do something with that would be something interesting where it's like, okay, you're going to play because coach is saying like a home and home and a neutral. You could, if you ever did something with Oregon, or if you ever did something with Washington, that might be cool. Get one there, one, because in Washington's the team. If I was going to do something like that, I'd rather it be with Washington, because there is some history with Notre Dame and Washington, not a significant one, but they've done home and homes at different times. And obviously they played twice in Washington during Charlie Weiss's era. They played at Washington in 05.
Yeah, they were at Washington in 05.
Right? And then they played again in 08. It was Michael Floyd's freshman year, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that. And then you play like a neutral site game in the Rose Bowl. That now you think about it, Trev, you brought up the Rose Bowl. That's a good idea, because that's actually one that I think would be cool, and it would make sense because it's two teams that like to recruit Southern California. It's a Pac-12 team, an old school Pac-12 team, and sort of a back in the Rose Bowl type of thing. Like, that actually wouldn't be that one I like. I like that one. And then I'd say probably Washington would be my best. Like, if Cal ever wanted to schedule a home and home, I'd say, no, we're not coming out to Berkeley. We're not going to play a football game on a fault line pass, that literally runs right through the stadium. And we'll go ahead and play the home and your version of the home in Pasadena. If you want to play us, we'll do that. That's what I would say.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
So, yeah. Good question. Good one to start with.
Peter Freibert, over under Notre Dame defense forcing 2.5 turnovers per game in 2025.
On average? I mean, that's 32. Would that be 40 turnovers next season? Right? Wouldn't that be 32 is 2, correct? If they play 16 games. And then
that'd be 40 turnovers.
I mean, Notre Dame led the nation in turnovers this past year with 33. Barely 2. So I'm going to go the under on that one. Let me see if there's been a time recently. Bowling Green had 28 in 13 games. That's not 2.5. That's 2.2. See, 32 out of for 14 for Western Kentucky. Don't believe that is 2. That's 2.3. Yeah, I don't see anybody close to that. Yeah, I don't see anybody. Actually, is that? Let's see here. Is that one close to 2.5? Just under. Cincinnati was just under 2.5 per game in 2019. Georgia Southern led the nation with 2. Yeah, Trev. I mean, only one team in the last decade has really sniffed that. Oh, maybe here down in Wyoming. Let's see here. This actually, Wyoming did it back in 2017. They were 2.9 back in 2017. So I'm going to go under on that one.
Yeah, I'm definitely taking the under on this one. Part of Notre Dame leading the nation in turnovers, what helped was a 5-turnover game against Navy. I don't think if they play again this year, Navy's turning the ball over like 5 times. So but regardless, I'm taking the under.
They might force. I mean, they'll force somebody else to turn the ball over that many times. It probably won't be Navy. But yeah, you had a 6-turnover game against Navy. You had a 5-turnover game against Virginia. You had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 games where you forced 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 games where they forced at least 2 turnovers. And then they forced a turnover in every game but one. Northern Illinois. But if they average 2 turnovers a game next year, they'll have a really good shot at finishing number 1, if very least in the top 5.
Yeah.
2.5 is a lot. And especially since, and this doesn't mean the secondary as a whole won't be as good, but the reality is you lost a guy who just had a knack for forcing turnovers in a way that we haven't seen at Notre Dame in a long time. Not just with the interceptions, but forced fumbles, fumble recoveries, things like that. That's a tough ask. If they're around 2, I mean, I'd set it at like 2, 2.1 is probably where I set it at. Is more of one that I think would be more interesting. Let's stay on the scheduling theme here, Trev, before we dive into more topics.
From keys to the car. I tried to ask this yesterday, but forgot it wasn't a mailbag. Like the Clemson 12-year agreement, would you make one with the ACC to play Florida State and Miami every other year? If not, what other team? Or there might be a 2-parter. I'm not sure.
I didn't see that. Let me go up here to see if the one we're on. So give me a second.
Or what other team would you want to play every year, kind of like Stanford and USC?
I kind of like the idea of having Miami and Florida State rotating, but I wouldn't do it every other year. I'd go 2 and 2, home and home, home and home, home and home, home and home. With all of that, with those, I wouldn't mind that, as opposed to having like one of them on your schedule full time. I'd say, you get, let's say this year, next year, Notre Dame plays Miami this year on the road. Next year they play them at home, and then in 27 they get Florida State on the road. The 28 they get Florida State at home. I'd be okay with something like that. If I was gonna do a long-term agreement with anybody else in the ACC, it would be one of Pitt or BC, because there's a rivalry there. It's getting a chance to play in the North. It's regions where there's a lot of Pittsburgh. It's a lot of Notre Dame recruits. It's an area you like to recruit, but there's also a lot of Notre Dame fans and alums. Boston College, there's a lot of Notre Dame fans and alums, and those are just games that I would like. So you already have kind of your Southern rival now, right? Is Clemson. Let's go back and establish one of the old school rivals. Like, I know the Big Ten rivals always get the attention. It's the Michigan States, the Michigans, the Purdues, and teams like that. But what about Pitt? I mentioned the other day, Pitt's top 5 all time against when it comes to playing Notre Dame in history. Why not renew that one? Or why not renew Boston College? Or play that one every year. Of the 2, I'd probably go with Pitt. Of the 2, Trev, I like the idea of playing in Pittsburgh, and the only thing that turns me off of that is I still don't love the idea of playing in that NFL stadium. It rarely sells out. It's just not a great environment. Pitt doesn't have good fans. Or I feel like BC is a little bit of a smaller stadium and better chance of filling that out. But and then it may be once every 10 years you play a game at where the Patriots play. Something like that. I would not want to play in Fenway again. That was not enjoyable. Being around the stadium was cool, but the actual game wasn't cool. But yeah, if I was going to do another ACC team, I'd probably schedule Pitt or Boston College. That would be it for me. Not one of those 2. But I wouldn't mind that, Trev. Is like, okay, you have, here's the deal we make with the ACC. We're going to play Clemson and for 12 years. Okay, and the 4 years that we have them that we already scheduled, those will count as ACC. The others won't. This is just going to be a rivalry with them. But part of the ACC restructuring is we'll play one of Miami or Florida State every year, and we want to play Pitt every year. That's our deal. And then you can rotate us with the other 3 games with whoever. You know, if I was Notre Dame, I'd even be willing to up the number of games you play against the ACC. I'd be willing to go to 6 if you could tell me I get Clemson on it every year, I get Pitt on it every year, and I get one of Miami or Florida State on it every year. We'll play 6. Now half our schedule's figured out. We don't have to worry about, you know, trying to schedule some Big 12 team or something like that. I'd be willing to even do that. But Pitt would probably be my choice. And if the Pitt had no interest in doing it because Narduzzi wanted to cry about it, then I'd say, okay, fine, we'll go play BC every year.
I wouldn't mind Miami. I guess if I had to choose between Pitt or BC, I would choose Pitt. I think there's more benefit to that game than Boston College. But I would like the one of Florida State or Miami every other year. I'd probably go Miami. You guys kind of know my tune by now, but I like the rivalry games where it's just like some teams just don't like each other. I like those rivalries. It's not always the tip of the cap rivalries. Like those are fine, but the tip of the cap rivalries that Notre Dame has are typically with not good teams. That's why I'm happy with Clemson coming up.
Like Navy.
I'm sure,
right?
Navy, Purdue, Boston College, Pitt. It's just kind of like, there are rivals because we play them a lot, but it's not I just can't stand that program. Like I want
because you never lived in Pittsburgh. If you lived in Pittsburgh like I did, trust me, you'd have a little bit more of a God, I want to beat those guys so bad.
Fair.
But I get your point though. I do. Here's my only caveat that I would say about Miami. I feel like if you're going to schedule them, it needs a cooling off period. Play 4, take 2 off. Play 4, take 2 off. Because of some of those real bitter where I just really dislike you, they can tend to kind of get a little bit, as we saw in the 80s, a little bit intense. And so I do like the idea of there being a little bit of a cooling off period with that rivalry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just a little bit of one.
Aiden Benami, who do you think is or will be Notre Dame's main or best 2026 committed recruiter? I like Javian Osborne. He might be it.
Well, the reality is there's never just been one. There's always one that gets the credit because, you know, from fans or because a guy likes to tweet a lot more. But like, I remember, what year it was? It was the 23 class. Like Drake Bowen just really dominated that recruitment. But there was other kids in the class that were very involved in that too. CJ Carr was obviously huge in the 24 class. But obviously Javian Osborne's doing a lot now because he's kind of fired up and he's in the class. He's excited. Will this last long term? I have no idea. I hope so. We've seen the offensive lineman, and Ben Nichols has been a kid that's been very active on social media when it comes to trying to convince other kids to stay. I don't know how he is behind the scenes because at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what you do on social media. Like no kid is going to be persuaded to go somewhere or swayed to go somewhere because somebody tweets at them. It's about the relationship you have. If you want to know why CJ Carr was effective as a recruiter, if you want to know why Drake Bowen was effective as a lead recruiter, it's because they'd get on the phone, they'd be texting, they'd be having personal conversations and relationships with those players. Whenever a kid that Drake really liked was visiting, Drake made sure he was there. As long as, sometimes it couldn't happen. You had a baseball tournament or something, but if it was at all possible, Drake was going to be there. CJ was going to be there. Like the Carr family spent so much time and money driving from Saline to Notre Dame when CJ was still in high school. Because CJ just felt like, hey, if I'm the leader of this class, I got to make sure that I'm here for as much as I can. Drake felt the same way. A little bit quicker for Drake, a little bit easier drive for Drake than it was CJ. But CJ doesn't live that far away. This is a couple hours. But, there needs to be somebody like that, somebody that's kind of in the region. And that's where why I like the fact that like Sullivan Garvin a little bit and Ben Nichols have really taken a little bit of a lead role there as well. Noah Grubbs does a lot behind the scenes from what I'm told with kids in the class. He doesn't do a ton publicly, like on Twitter, but I'm told Noah does a lot behind the scenes. That's just kind of what I'm told. I haven't experienced it firsthand. That's kind of it. Oh, here's one. Rodney Dunham is very aggressive in helping to recruit for Notre Dame. Very aggressive from what I'm told. Like But Rodney does it the private way, not the public way, where he's tweeting at kids. Rodney's on the phone. We talked about how Rodney played a huge role in getting Ebenezer Iwatade to commit before Rodney went public. Like, for those of you that didn't listen to that commitment show, Rodney Dunham silently committed to Notre Dame before he went public. He also silently committed to Notre Dame before Ebenezer Iwatade went public. So Rodney had a big role in Ebenezer making the decision when he did. Like, hey, man, let's do this together and that kind of thing. So Rodney Dunham's another guy that's been very active as a recruiter so far. That's another one on defense. He's not a real heavy social media presence, but behind the scenes, I'm told Rodney's doing a lot. And we talk to kids who talk about what Rodney's doing behind the scenes as well. So those would be ones for me, Trev.
Yeah, good deal.
Yeah.
Good deal.
A lot of recruiting questions today.
Bobby S., in terms of just play speed, what former Notre Dame back would you comp Jonas Walton and Javian Osborne to, just in terms of speed? Do you expect Notre Dame to continue to recruit Bonner, maybe as a slot?
So Osborne, I've said, he reminds me a lot of Jadarian Price, explosiveness-wise, like a lot of Jadarian. Jonas Walton, I was having a hard time with a good comp because Jonas Walton is one of those kids, Trev, that it took me a few times to watch him before I really – like, he was one of those you had to grow on me, guys, because he's got a very unorthodox running style. He's kind of got that Ashton Genty standing straight up at the snap kind of backfield alignment, and I don't know that he gets away with it as well as Ashton does, but you watch him and he's like, he doesn't run, like he's not like Javian Osborne looks really fast. And then you look at Jonas Walton and you're like, he doesn't quite look as fast, and he's a little bit more of a short strider, and you're just kind of like, okay, well, how fast is he really? And then you watch him and, is he really all that elusive? And then the more you watch him, you're like, dude, it's like, it's not sexy. It's not pretty, but man, that guy is like running away from people. And that guy is, making big plays, and that guy's doing this and that guy's doing that. And you say, okay, this guy can move. But it takes some time. But then you look at track, and Javian Osborne's best track time is like an 11 flat. He ran a year ago. A year ago, Jonas Walton ran a 10.8. His best time this year is a 10.6. And you're like, dude, I just, do you really see that on film? But it's like, it's one of those ones, after a while, you're like, dude, okay, he's just got that funky running style. Michael Floyd was like that. Michael Floyd did not look fast, but he just had that weird Rod Smith gait, that kind of that loping kind of running style. And so I was having trouble with the comp for Jonas Walton, but D. Trollhunter actually sent me one. And I think it's a great comp. Body type, skill set, speed. Jonas Gray. Because Jonas was a top 100 recruit coming out of high school. And then he just kind of didn't do anything. And then his senior year, Jonas Gray was a dude for Notre Dame. And I've said this a lot of times. If Jonas doesn't get hurt against Boston College, I think he rushes for 1,000 yards that year. I mean, he averaged 6.9 yards per carry. He had 12 touchdowns that season. Like, Jonas Gray was a dude, and there's a lot of ways where I think Jonas Gray has a skill set that's very similar to Jonas Walton. And their names are similar, but just a very different player. Because if you look at Jonas Gray in 2011, Trev, he had 12 touchdowns on 111 carries. And if you look at his production that year, that's one touchdown in every less than 10 carries. He was scoring a touchdown that season. That's not that far away from what Jeremiah Love did this season. And actually, it's slightly better if you look at the numbers. If Jonas Walton or Jonas Gray, on his number of carries, his touchdown per carry average, if you give him the same number of carries that Jeremiah Love had this year, he'd have 17.6 touchdowns, which you would round up to 18. So at the very least, at the same level, if not slightly better. That's how good he was that year. And this is a guy that went to the NFL and rushed for 200 yards in a game against the Colts. And then, of course, the reason why he no longer had those opportunities is exactly why Jonas Gray never kind of had the success in college that he had. Like Jonas wanted to be a comedian. Like that's just the kind of guy he was. And I actually really like Jonas Gray. And but you have to understand that. But I think Detroit Hunter's comp that he sent me is better than anything I've been able to think of when it comes to Jonas Walton, because he just has that really unique running style, Trev. So I think that's a great comp. Like his game is really, because a lot of people are like, well, Jonas Gray wasn't that fast. Yeah, he was. Like, yeah, go watch him on that long 80-something yard touchdown run against Pitt back in 2011, and you realize, no, that guy could move. He just didn't look like it.
Yeah, for sure. Another, not really on this topic, but another running back that I think kind of has a funky run style is Nicholas Singleton at Penn State. I watch him run, and I'm like, this looks a little odd. Obviously, it's very effective. But I was watching some of his carry. He really, whatever arm the ball isn't in, swings really hard. Like it looks like he's trying really hard to run. It doesn't look like that effortless run like what Jeremiah Love has, when it's just the second he gets into open speed, it kind of looks like he's floating a little bit. Nicholas Singleton is like trying, but he's still fast. So yeah, he has an interesting run style too. That's what this kind of conversation made me think of.
That's my best comp for him. Again, sometimes it's like, look, I don't need to come up with one just so I can say I thought of it. There's not one that I'm going to come up with. I'd have to force one to be better than what Detroit Hunter sent me. Will Notre Dame continue to recruit Brian Bonner as a slot? I don't think so. They're still recruiting him now because they don't have a second back committed. If that changes on May 14th when Jonas Walton makes a decision, then sure, I expect them to move on from Brian Bonner. I don't think it would make a lot of sense to recruit him as a slot because there's better guys already on the board and in your class. Brian Bonner, to me, is, as I said the other day, is a bit of kind of a hybrid running back. He can play running back, but it's got to be as like a slasher, complementary type. I don't know that he's a 15-plus carry game guy. Could be wrong on that, but that's just what I see. I like him as more of like a DeAnthony Thomas type of runner, slot, shifty, can play in the slot, can do jets, can get some stuff out of the backfield. But they've got Bubba Frazier, who's a more explosive player than what Brian Bonner is. They've already got him in the class. They've got Braden Robinson that they're trying to recruit to already, like Braden Robinson might even be the better comp for that than Brian Bonner. And they're obviously on him very heavily as well. And both of those guys are even faster than Brian Bonner, who's fast. Don't get me wrong, but I don't see the need to recruit Brian Bonner. I like Brian Bonner a lot. I don't like him as much as I think what some Notre Dame fans do, and some of the recruiting services that have him as a very highly regarded, top. I think one of the services has him as a top 50 player. Let me go look this up real quick. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, On3 has him as a borderline top 250, top 50 player. He's at 55. ESPN has it 91, 247, 104. Rivals doesn't have him in the top 250. I'm somewhere in between 247 and ESPN on him. I think he's a top 250 guy, but I don't have him in my top 100 either. But so I don't know that there would be a need for that. If they didn't have Bubba Frazier in the class, and if they didn't have Braden Robinson, a great shot at Braden Robinson, then I'd say, maybe you think about that. If they are able to fill up a running back before he makes a decision. But I think he stays out west.
Good deal. Aiden Benami, do you think a goal or ideal trend would be for Notre Dame's defense to be like the Ravens in the NFL? With the transition to Ash, we're keeping the framework and still putting out solid defenses for a while now. Yeah, Aiden, I mean, ideally, I'm sure the goal of a lot of teams is to be like a version of the Ravens defense in the NFL. I guess my question, do you mean schematically or just big picture being known for defense? I mean, the Ravens pass defense last season was not that great, but it was either their pass or their run defense. I know obviously it's one of the two, but I know one of them, they weren't a good, complete defense last season. So, I mean, yeah, I think an ideal goal would be for Notre Dame's defense to be like the Ravens in that they're a program, they're a school, an organization that is known for good defensive football. But I think there's some other teams that can also be attributed to that. So that, I don't know if that satisfies your question or not, but that's how I took it. Jacob Hayden, if Notre Dame is able to close on Hola and Walton, this is the hottest they've been on the recruiting trail in the Freeman era.
It's close. It's in the conversation. I mean, there's been stretches before where they landed some really good players in a short period of time. I'm going to go back to let me just look a couple up, because I like when CJ Carr committed. The next couple months after that, they did very well. They've had moments like this in the past, and because it's not just like to his point, it's not just Trev. It's not just like, oh, they're getting guys, but it's also about they're getting guys that are really good players, and they're getting guys that are like top 100 highly ranked guys. So not just that we think are top 100 guys, but that are actually like ranked that high, where they also create some of that national perception. So, I mean, it's close. I mean, from in February of 2022, they signed within like a 2-month span. They signed Braylon James, Sam Pendleton, Boubacar Traore, Devin Houston, Sullivan Absher, Joe Wadding, and Charles Jagasol in April, May, and June. So, and I believe there was another guy they got during that time that then flipped. And then in July, they got Micah Bell, Rico Flo, actually within the middle of July. So the first one was on May 19th or April 19th. So May, June, July. So just in a 3-month stretch, they got Braylon James, Sam Pendleton, Boubacar Traore, Devin Houston, Sullivan Absher, Joe Wadding, Charles Jagasol, Micah Bell, Rico Flores, Christian Gray, Jane Greathouse. Like, that's a pretty good stretch as well. And this is more of like they're now in month 2 of this. So it's a hot stretch. I don't know if I'd say it's like definitely the hottest stretch. I just think this is kind of how it's been under Marcus Freeman. I mean, we keep telling you guys like this. They recruited a very high level, and they have been since Marcus Freeman got here. So this should not be expected. You just kind of let it play out. I mean, I'll point again to like March 29th to last year to the end of July. So from March to July, they got Anthony Knapp, Cole Mullins, Bryce Young, Kennedy Urlacher, Micah Gilbert, Teddy Rizak, Bodie Cahoon, Logan Thomas, Sean Sevillano, Keedron Young, Styles Prescott, Tabron Benny Powell, Bronte Johnson, Logan Saldate, and Kingston Villamasa. Like almost the entire class committed between March to July. And even if you just look up to like where we are right now, April 15th, they still got, and they already had Leonard Moore, Aeneas Williams, Cam Williams, CJ Carr, Jack Larson, Carson Hobbs already in the class. And then from March 29th to, let's say, May 15th, because that's close to where we are now, they also added Anthony Knapp, Cole Mullins, Bryce Young, Kennedy Urlacher, Micah Gilbert, Teddy Rizak, and Bodie Cahoon. Like, this is just kind of what Marcus Freeman's staff does on the recruiting trail. Last year, we didn't see quite that same level of success. They had stretches where they landed a lot of kids, but it wasn't the same type of high-impact players as it was this year. So, yeah. And they loaded up a lot earlier last year as well, so that kind of factored into it also. But they're on fire, dude. There's no doubt about it. There's no doubt about it, especially if they can get Tiki Hola and Jonas Walton. Like, that'd be huge.
Yeah.
We'll see how that plays out.
Yep. Staff's cooking right now.
Mm-hmm.
ND, it just means more. As much as I would have loved to see Angeli succeed, what percentage do you give someone else starting at least 2 to 3 games for Syracuse? No injury.
That's a good question. I personally think Ricky Collins is a more talented quarterback than Steve Angeli. I liked Ricky a lot coming out of high school. Is his experience going to be enough to allow him to win that job? I think I saw somebody say something. I think some Syracuse person said something about he got injured late in the spring. He's got a hand injury. They kept him out of the spring game as a precaution, but apparently it's nothing Nothing injury. It's not going to affect him in the summer. I don't know if that maybe spooked him a little bit. I have no idea. But if there's an honest battle for the job, I don't think it's a given that Steve Angeli starts for Syracuse. But I don't know that they're going to have an honest battle for the job, because I just have a hard time believing that Steve Angeli went to Syracuse over some of the other schools that he was looking at, unless they were going to kind of say, dude, you're our guy. I just have a hard time with that. But personally, I think Ricky Collins is a more talented quarterback. So I'd say, what percentage? I don't know, 40%. I just feel like he didn't make, like, that would be such a bad decision to go somewhere where you're not being told you're going to be the guy. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, you and I see that the same. It was also interesting because Ricky Collins was named the starter at Syracuse. It's not like there's an ongoing battle and Steve wanted to add his name to the hat. It was like Syracuse announced Ricky Collins as their starting quarterback. And then Steve elected to go. But on the flip side of that coin, I would have to imagine that Steve is not transferring somewhere to then be a backup once again. So I have no idea. Genuinely. I really don't. ND, I wish I could give you a percentage. I do. But injury aside, couldn't tell you. Could not tell you. Rabid Wombats. How would the 1988 Notre Dame team match up with the 2024 team? 2025 team with CJ Carr starting. Who wins the battle in the trenches? Run versus run defense, pass versus secondary, and final score prediction for each matchup.
I mean, I know that's fun to talk about, but it's really impossible to really evaluate a team from 1988 to a team from now because of just the size differences.
Yeah.
How big would a guy who grew up in 1988 and 1980s, how big would he be if that same exact player grew up in today's era with differences in nutrition and just different aspects of how we evolve as a species, things like that? I mean, I have no idea. Well, all I could tell you, though, is that team would have no problem competing with this team speed-wise. And, in fact, they'd have some issues with that team's speed. Like Rocket Ismail is one of those transcendent players that he's fast no matter what. He's not fast for his time. He's fast even now. And then how much faster would he be, again, if he grew up in this era? So it's hard to say. Look, the 2024 team was not as dominant of a team as the 1988 team. If you make all things equal, how do you compare? Like, is 1988, if that team is existence in today, are they running the option the way that they're running the option? I have no idea. But the 1988 team was better. They were more dominant in the trenches. They had great speed on offense, deep loaded running back room, really dynamic quarterback, NFL players throughout the back seven. It was a loaded team. Could 2024 have beat them if healthy? Maybe, but I just don't see it. 2025, I haven't seen that team play a single game. I'm excited about what this team could be. I think this might be a team that maybe is Notre Dame's best team chance to win a title since probably 2015 from a roster standpoint. Obviously, coaching is better on this team. But I mean, that 88 team was special, Rabbit. And I'm not trying to get into too much of that big picture debate, but if all things were equal and relative to, you could somehow take the eras and make them similar, put 2024 back then and the more of the size that they would be, that team was more dominant in the trenches than this team was. So I'd say that team would win that battle. Run game versus run defense. This Notre Dame team had some issues defending the run. That team was great at running the football. Had a very dynamic quarterback, something that Notre Dame's had some issues with. That team didn't pass the ball very well, but they had elite speed and big playmaking ability. But they'd have some issues with Rocket, but I think they could find some ways to maybe somewhat neutralize him and say, we're going to make Ricky Waters and Pat Eilers beat you. Ricky Waters is kind of a good player too. So, yeah, Derek Brown was a stud tight end as a freshman. He was a star. And then the other way around, how would that team have been able to handle Notre Dame's speed on offense? Relatively well. I mean, they handled the speed at Miami that year. They handled, Major Harrison, who's a dynamic quarterback. They handled Rodney Peete, and that USC team was ranked number 2. So I think that defense would have given Notre Dame's offense a lot of the same problems that teams like Ohio State and Georgia gave the Notre Dame offense, which is where they just would whoop you up front, and you would have trouble running the football on them. Who's going to get open against Todd Light for Notre Dame? Who's going to get open against Pat Terrell? That team had more mismatches than the 2014. 25 might be a different story, Trev, but I just got to see him play first. You know what I mean? Like, it's all theoretical at this point in time. Malachi Fields would probably, in theory, give them a much tougher problem than anyone that Notre Dame had in 2024. Jaden Greathouse is a much tougher matchup in 2025 than he was in 2024. So there's a lot of moving parts, but like, I can say this: the 1988 team was better than the 2024 team for their time. Far more dominant. I mean, you got to think about this, Trev. Notre Dame that year, I'm going to say it again because I just love saying it, because it's really says a lot about how good that team was. But if you look at the end of the season rankings, so after Notre Dame won the title, Notre Dame finishes number 1. They beat the number 2, the number 4, the number 5, and the number 7 teams in the country that season. That's really impressive. It's a really good team. So I just, that team was better. 24's got a shot to be better if they can win all their games, obviously, but that's what that team did. They won and beat the defending national champs too, by the way, and ended Miami's 30-something game winning streak. That was impressive. Notre Dame 2024 doesn't beat Miami from 1988, in my opinion.
I think it's just so hard to say. I mean, to be honest, and I'm obviously looking at it from a different light because I've watched the 88 Miami game, but I didn't watch it live. I wasn't a part of the season as it happened, but I was a part of the 24 season as it happened. But the game itself has also just evolved. Like, not even just the teams and the athletes, but like how football is played is completely different than what
we're in a 5-2.
Yeah, like Miami in the 88 game had like 6 turnovers. I mean, you're not. A lot of those were forced. Agreed, yeah. But I'm talking in big time matchups now. You don't see teams turning the ball over 6 times like it was in the game then.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, forced, unforced. I mean, the game has changed. The offensive skill sets have changed. Size, physicality has changed. I would literally just have no gauge.
Mm-hmm. And that's why I can only look at it from the standpoint of levels of dominance.
Yeah.
If Notre Dame from 1988 played Notre Dame from 2024, what systems are they running? I don't know. You can't play nickel against that offense. You get killed. You can't also run a 5-2 against it. Well, actually, Notre Dame's 88 team would have a better shot playing with a 5-2 against what we saw from Notre Dame in 2024. Actually, I should take that back, but you won't be able to do that against the 2025 team.
No.
It's just such a different era. It really is. But level of dominance, that 1988 team was just really, really special. And here's the crazy thing. They weren't even as good as the 89 team. Like, that's the crazy thing. Just like talent-wise and dominance-wise, they weren't.
And it just means more. Theo Riddick, Aeneas Williams, Armando Allen, and Chris Tyree. Who is the best pass catcher in your opinion? And who would have the best stats if they each had 30-plus targets?
Well, Theo. I mean, Theo was. I mean, Theo literally played receiver for 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And Chris Tyree wasn't a supernatural pass catcher, but he could get the job done and was pretty dynamic. Aeneas is a real natural pass catcher. I keep saying natural pass catcher. Armando Allen was a really good pass catcher out of the backfield. He was a check down screen guy. He wasn't someone you're going to line up and run a sluggo with like Aeneas Williams did against Penn State, and like I said, Theo literally started for 2 years at receiver. He started at running back in 2009, played 10 and 11 at receiver, and then moved back to running back in 2012. So it's Theo. And Theo could make some really tough catches. Like, was it Oklahoma? He made that crazy back shoulder catch against, it was Oklahoma, wasn't it? Or maybe it was Purdue. but
In what year?
Stanford, 2012. He made it crazy.
It was Purdue. Tommy Rees just kind of heaved it up, and
Yep. You are correct. But he was the best. And I'd probably put Aeneas number 2, Chris Tyree number 3, Armando number 4. As far as just pure pass catcher. And yeah.
Theo also had a really nice one-handed catch in 2010 against Michigan State on the road too.
On a slot or a slant, right out of the slot. Yes, I remember that. Dane threw that sucker about 100 miles an hour.
Sure did.
Like that was not a soft touch throw that he went up and got.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it's Theo Riddick kind of by a lot.
Yeah,
but I like why you included all these guys for sure. But it's Theo.
In the 10-year span from 2010 to basically 2020, which is technically 11 seasons, but there were 3 catches that I put in which is the best against Michigan State. That one is, there's 4. That one, Michael Floyd in that same game in 10 had that really nasty back of the end zone touchdown grab. Chase Claypool's go ball again, back shoulder go ball against Michigan State in 2015, 2017 was nasty. But do you remember the third and 10 seam route that Durham Smythe caught in that game where he got drilled in the back of the head?
Yeah.
Still caught it. Notre Dame players made some really nasty catches against Michigan State. The best of all, though, is it different area? Do you remember the over-the-shoulder catch that Rama had against Michigan State in 2006?
Oh, yeah, in the corner of the end zone?
Yes.
Yeah.
That was ridiculous.
In the middle of a monsoon.
That was ridiculous.
I remember that catch.
They've had some crazy catches against Michigan State, man. John Carlson had a catch that game that got tipped and went up in the air, and he went and got it. They've had some crazy plays. That's those were some really impressive catches. No doubt about that. I want to try to get to a few here, people we haven't got to yet before we move back up to the top.
Yeah, man. Tommy Guns, IB dinner party Friday of the A&M week.
I've thought about it, Tommy. So we're doing a tailgate that day. We're definitely planning on, barring my parents not being well or something like that. The plan is that we're going to definitely do one that Saturday. So, Trev, you might want to start planning to be here for that particular game. So,
we already are.
Okay,
Don't
good.
you worry.
I've thought about doing something one of these games, like a Friday night get together. It's a lot of coordinating and a lot to do. But since there's a bye week before, I've thought about it, and I may employ you a little bit on that, a little bit, Trev, to try to help me out with some places to potentially do that. So we'll see. We'll see, Tommy. It's something that I'm contemplating. Doing something Friday night and then having the tailgate on Saturday. We'll see.
Let me know, man. I love planning events.
Nice.
So
I didn't know that. Like, that's good to know. That's very good to know.
I love doing it. So
very good to know.
Let me know. Yeah, we'll be up for sure for the A&M game and for the USC game. It's just a question of if Lauren's parents want to see Notre Dame's campus on game day. Lauren's grandpa went to grad school at Notre Dame, graduated in 65.
Wow. Okay.
I think. So
it's a little different than when he was here.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, definitely different from when he was here.
A little bit.
That's for sure.
PJC 1122, on a per touch basis, how do you rank these players? Percy Harvin, Reggie Bush, Rocket Ismail.
I'd go Rocket 1. That's tough. I memean, they're all per touch basis. I'd probably go Reggie 2 and Percy 3. Problem with Percy, he was banged up a little bit in college. He just couldn't stay healthy, whereas the other two did a great job of staying healthy. Rocket got knocked out of 2 games his whole career, I believe. He got knocked out of the Stanford game in 90, I think, when they lost, and I think the Penn State game that year. But I'd go Rocket, Reggie 2, and Percy 3. And if somebody wanted to argue with me that Reggie is in front of Rocket, I would fine. Okay, because like Rocket was more explosive, Reggie was more elusive. Fine. I'd say, hey, man, agree to disagree. They were both phenomenal. If somebody wanted to argue that Percy was ahead, I'd be like, I don't agree. But again, I'm not going to argue with you on it because they were all just special electric players. They really were. And they all won titles. I mean, that's the thing too, is like they were all winners. I mean, say whatever you want about Percy, and you may not like Percy, and I wasn't a huge fan. He's from my area. A lot of things about him that I'd heard I wasn't a big fan of, but at the same time, this kid was part of 2 national championship teams at Florida, and was a real dynamic player in a lot of different ways. Yeah. Now the only thing about Percy is I don't remember him returning kicks at Florida. That's part of also the reason why I may put him third. Is I don't remember him doing kicks. But he was a legit two-way weapon. I mean, 428 yards rushing and 427 yards receiving as a freshman. Sophomore year, 764 rushing, 858 receiving. Junior year, 660 rushing, 644 receiving. That's pretty balanced. That's pretty balanced guy. Reggie obviously was the guy that got the most touches of the 3. But man, Reggie, which is also partly why I believe Reggie has more of those highlight reel type of plays, is just because the opportunities were greater, obviously, for him. But Rocket Ismail was a dynamic weapon as well. So I do say the only regret with Rocket is I do wish he maybe he got a little bit more touches, but. Reggie Bush, 105 touches as a freshman, 186 as a sophomore, 237 as a junior. Percy was at 75, 142, and 110. Rocket on offense was 12, 91, and 99. Just such a different thing. But then Rocket had 71 returns during his career. Percy didn't have any, but Reggie had 111 returns in his career. Had 4 touchdowns in his career as a returner. Rocket had 6. So he was real dynamic player. Very dynamic player.
I'd probably go Reggie, Rocket, Percy Harvin. Reggie Bush.
I'm going to argue with you on this one, Trev.
No,
dude, you just said you weren't going to argue. What is your deal?
It's so tough, man. And as much as I hate to say it, Reggie Bush is one of the most dynamic players I've ever watched.
I don't hate to say it. He was fun to watch.
I mean, I just hate to say it because he played at USC.
True.
That's why I hate to say it.
I respect greatness, man. I love greatness. That's the big thing for me.
He was so crazy to watch. And I think Rocket was limited by how athletic and how skilled he was for the time that he played in, to be honest, because I think if he played more of a modern era of football, I think he would have put up more Reggie Bush numbers.
What do you mean limited athletically?
No, I'm saying his athletic ability was limited in the time that he played.
Yeah, meaning he would have if you'd have put him in a guy that I've said, hey, if you could use him in a similar way, the way kind of I think it was Oregon how they used Anthony Thomas, but something like that where he had 243 carries in his career, 113 catches, like that, or flip that a little bit, 200 catches and over 100 carries. Like that type of usage is how I would have loved to have seen him. But could you imagine Rocket, with all due respect to Percy Harvin, could you imagine Rocket doing what Percy did? Put him just in that 07 to 09 Florida offense. He'd have been a better player, in my opinion. And you'd have got more out of him in the return game also. I agree with that, Trev. His numbers, and I've used this as an argument before when people start trying to compare Reggie and Rocket, and I'm like, how can you even compare the two? Reggie had 4,600 yards of offense. He had over 2,000 yards returning, and you look at Rocket. Rocket had 2,500 yards of offense and 1,500 yards of returns. And I'm like, Reggie, they played more games. Reggie played 13, 13, and 13. Rocket played 11, 12, and 11. Reggie played an offense where he had 443 attempts rushing and 95 catches. Rocket, as a receiver, had 71 catches in his career and 131 carries. It's a different offense. It was a different era. And then also a different offense. Even back then, Rocket would have produced more if he played at Miami.
I was just about to say, it's a receiver with his skill set and his athletic ability was playing in a triple option offense.
Right.
that's just going to handicap you no matter who you are. It's not to take away from Rocket as an individual. So that's why I have it ranked the way that
it's going to handicap you statistically.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Agree. Let's see here. Okay, here's one, Trev, that you can address.
Nomer Grizz, Trevor's fun post offensive.
Have you put this back up on the board?
I did.
Good.
I did. Nomer Grizz, Trevor's fun post offensive all-star teams from 2010 to 2024 showed me that Brian Kelly underachieved overall in his time at Notre Dame. Why do you think he could never have both great offense and great defense at the same time?
Because I just don't think Brian Kelly had the – I think Brian Kelly always kind of thought he could do things a certain way. And then when he got exposed, he would then overcorrect to the opposite side. So, tried to be great on offense early, ended up not being good, tried to then lean into the defense. The offense got stale. And then also his ego. He hires Brian Van Gorder for some ungodly reason and then doesn't want to admit he made a mistake. Every coach makes mistakes. Saban, Urban Meyer, Dabo, Marcus Freeman has and will make more when it comes to hires. It's just part of the job. I don't care how good of a coach you are.
Yep.
Nick Saban, deep into his career, made hires. You're like, just the best coaches kind of find way that, hey, you know what? That was a mistake. I need to move on from it as quickly as possible. He wasn't willing to do that. And he wouldn't have fired Brian Van Gorder when he did in year 3 if Jack Swarbrick didn't step in and basically make it happen. And if there wasn't about to be a mutiny in the locker room, like, there were guys, I was told at the time, there were guys talking about, I'm not playing anymore for this guy after the Duke game. Like, I'm not playing for this guy anymore. It got bad. Like, there was almost a fight on the sidelines between him and Keith Gilmore. Do you know how big of an a-hole you got to be to get Keith Gilmore to want to fight you in the middle of a game? That's like, Keith Gilmore's like a grandpa. I'm being serious. Like, he was literally a grandfather. He was an older guy, been around the block, and like, that guy's trying to fight you in the middle of a game. Basically, like, you are a problem. And Marcus Freeman would have never let that happen for 3 years. I don't know if he'd have let it happen for 2. But it's just stuff like that. It just and the other thing is Brian Kelly cared more about doing all the I'm the head coach at Notre Dame stuff and golfing and all that than he did about truly building a championship football team. And that's my biggest fear with Marcus Freeman. And I say that not because of anything having to do with Marcus Freeman, but just my entire life, that's been the downfall of the 2 best coaches that Notre Dame has had. Because I can say I dislike Brian Kelly all I want, but in my lifetime, he's still the 2nd best head coach they've had prior to Marcus Freeman. Lou Holtz being number 1. I'm sorry. Like, I grew up, the head coaches basically that I would have been alive for is 1 year of Dan Devine. I don't know anything about Dan Devine. Jerry Faust, Lou Holtz, Bob Davie, Ty Willingham, Charlie Weiss, and then Brian Kelly. It's not even close. Brian Kelly's number 2 pre-Marcus Freeman. And a big part of his problem is he didn't want to do the football stuff as much anymore. He literally told a Notre Dame coach, I'm not calling this receiver who, by the way, last year, 2 years ago, or should say 2023, was part of a very dynamic receiving corps for a team that played in the national championship game. Coach is begging Kelly to, hey, I need you to help me get this over the finish line. I think we can flip this kid. Not begging. He literally refused to do it. I'm not begging a kid to come here. What? Talking about Jalen McMillan, by the way. So you don't think Jalen McMillan could have helped Notre Dame's receiving corps in 22 and 23? Come on now. You don't think Sam Hartman would have enjoyed throwing to Jalen McMillan in 2023? But just he wanted to go do the other stuff. Guy became a much better golfer by the end of his Notre Dame career than he was when he first got here. And I'm not saying that as a joke. That's a legitimate statement. That's because that's the stuff he cared about, not what do I got to do to grind to go get this win. And that's why he would make all the excuses he would make of why they couldn't do this and why they couldn't do that, because he didn't want to put in the work to do it. He didn't have his ego was too big to say, you know what, this is on me. I got to fix this. Because the only time he remotely had that sort of self-awareness was after 2016 when he was forced to have that level of self-awareness. But as soon as they got good again, by the end of 2017, he was right back to the same old crap.
Yep.
That's the biggest. Because Trev, he's wasted the 2011 team. Like, Y'all, do y'all realize who was on that Notre Dame 2011 football team? Do y'all realize like how loaded that team was in 2011? You had two guys on that team that were veterans and are going to end up being in the Pro Football Hall of Fame in Zach Martin and Harrison Smith. You had Michael Floyd on that team. You had Tyler Eifert on that team. You had TJ Jones on that team, who was an NFL draft pick. You had Theo Riddick on that team, who was an NFL draft pick. You had Sear Wood was a 1,000-yard runner on that team. You had Jonas Gray on that team. Trevor Robinson was on that team. Chris Watt was on that team. Braxton Cave was on that team. All NFL players, in my opinion, pre-injury. That's just the offense, which is the worst side of the ball. Defensively, you had Harrison Smith, Manti Te'o, Robert Blanton, Gary Gray, Darius Fleming, Jamor Slaughter, Lewis Nick, Zeke Mata, Carlo Calabrese, Aaron Lynch, Stephon Tuitt, Capron Lewis Moore, Print Shembo, Sean Swinar. Troy Nicholas even played that year. Bennett Jackson was an NFL draft pick. Ethan Johnson, Danny Spond. Like, that team was absolutely freaking loaded. And you went 8-5. 8-5. I've never seen a coach waste more talent than what Brian Kelly did. It was maddening. Absolutely maddening. Because he didn't want to work. He didn't want anybody to tell him what to do. He was going to do it his way.
Yeah, Domer, to your point, I had a lot of those thoughts when I was putting those lists together. Is with all the players that went through this program, how did Notre Dame not make more of a run at a title until 2024? With a team where a lot of their impact players were injured. You know, so it was frustrating. 2011 was a rough year. 2014 was a rough year, especially with how they started, how talented that team was. Yep. State the obvious. I mean, 2016 was a disappointment. I don't think they would have competed for a playoff spot or a national championship. I know they don't go 4-8 with literally any other coaching staff.
Yep.
Legitimately. I mean,
and people say like, oh, you know, you had 3 undefeated seasons. Okay, first of all, they should have been undefeated in those years. I'd argue you should have had more, especially with some of the schedules they played. 2018 team, once you beat Michigan at home, who on that schedule should have beat that team? Who else was good on that roster, that schedule? Who was the next best team you played? Syracuse? Northwestern? Like who the only year where you could argue that they actually had that it was an accomplishment to go undefeated that year is 2012.
Yeah.
2020, They played nobody in the regular season. They played at home against Clemson, who was missing their star quarterback and three other guys on defense. 3 starters on defense. You were missing Tyler Davis, Mike Jones, and one of their DBs. And you needed overtime to beat DJ Uiagalelei in his second career start as a true freshman, who torched your defense. Then you got a rematch against that team, got embarrassed. Like you should have had those. Those teams should have been undefeated.
Yeah.
They didn't play. They had like 2 tough games a year. And yes, you are judged by that. You can't. I'll see that and I'll say there was more seasons he wasted than years he got most out of his team. It amazes me that there's still Brian Kelly apologists out there. I think some people are just contrarian. They just like to argue. But like none of those seasons were impressive outside of 2012. That's what they should have done.
Well, and even the seasons where they did go undefeated, they got embarrassed in the postseason.
Yes.
I'm not even upset that they lost. I am upset that they lost. But look, sometimes you just lose. Sometimes you lose to the better team. Even all cards on the table, even if Notre Dame didn't lose by the margin they did, Alabama was the better football team. We talk about the makeup of the roster of 2012.
No
that Bama team was nuts, man. And sometimes you just lose, but there's a difference between losing and getting absolutely embarrassed. Why does Notre Dame have – we talked yesterday about national narratives.
Yep.
Why does Notre Dame have the big game narrative? It's because of who was at the helm of this program for 12 years. And there's nobody going to convince me otherwise. Notre Dame could go 11-1 or 12-0 in the regular season. They're going to lose by 30 when they get to the postseason. How do I know? Because I watched it in all 3 postseason appearances under Brian Kelly.
Yep. And I'll take a loss in the regular season for someone who actually shows up on the big stages than the other way around. Hey, we beat a bunch of nobodies. Great. Wonderful. What happened when you played someone good? So say the only undefeated regular season that I respect is 2012.
Yeah.
That was a good – I mean, you had to beat a really good Stanford team in 2012. You had to beat a really good Oklahoma team that year. I'll give you that. You had to play 2 really good teams. Who else on that schedule did they play that was worth a darn? But look, but I'm not going to dismiss that year because you beat Oklahoma on the road and that Stanford team at home. That's an accomplishment. I'm not going to spin that away. But you weren't even competitive when you got to the national title game. Yes, Bama was better. They weren't 42-14, and it wasn't that close better. You lost by 27 to Clemson because you didn't recruit well enough to where if you had one injury, your team was toast. You can't recruit DBs in Notre Dame. Yeah, you can. Lou did it. Charlie even did it. That's the reality of it. But again, there's something to say, okay, great. He had every now and then those great teams. Where's their consistency? That's what good coaches do. They consistently win. Yeah, you went 12-0 once. Well, why were you 8-5 the year before with an even better roster? Why? Because the year before you had everybody from 2012 was on the team in 2011, and you had Michael Floyd, and you had Harrison Smith, and you had Darius Fleming. And I mean, where was that? Because maybe if you'd have been better in 2010 and 2011, where you should have been, you might have recruited better, that you'd have a better chance to be successful. But when you go 12-0 in 2012, and it's preceded by 8-5, and it's followed 9-4 and 8-5, I'm not impressed. Because, I mean, that's okay. Then let's say, Sonny Dykes is a great coach because he had that one great year at TCU. Yay. What did he do before and after? You're not a great coach. And the problem is you should have been. Like the 2012 team should have become a normal occurrence to where every year you're a 10 to 12 win team every single year. Not 12-0 one year and then 8 wins and 8 wins before and then 9 wins and 8 wins afterwards. Hey, you beat Rutgers in a bowl game. Good job. Like, come on. That's the problem. That's the problem. And that's why that guy was an average coach when you look at compared to other top coaches. Now, is he better than the guys between him and Holtz? Of course. But that's not the standard you evaluate yourself on. And the reality is for all the defending and all the water carrying people want to do, everything I told you about Brian Kelly before he got fired, everyone else finally admitted once he left. He didn't work on the recruiting trail. His players didn't like him. They didn't respect him. You talk to players in the 2015 and the 2018 team, the ones that I know, not everybody's this way. A lot of them say, well, we were the primary drivers of that. We're the ones that did that. We didn't even see this guy around. Or they'll say, that's because of Matt Bayless. That's because of Clark Lee. I know players in Notre Dame say, well, Clark Lee's the reason, and Matt Bayless is the reason we went undefeated, not Brian Kelly. We didn't even see him the entire offseason. I literally had a team captain tell me that cat welcomed us in January, and we didn't see him again until about a week before spring ball started. And we're going to give him credit for the 2018 season? No. They won in spite of him in 2018. That's a fact.
PJC 1122.
We actually had that one. I meant to click on this one.
Tyler Ottinger. Shout out to Vince. There's a Pope from Chicago before there's a quarterback from Chicago to throw for 4,000 yards in a season.
Did Caleb what did he throw for last year?
34.
Let me look up that real quick.
I don't remember off the top of my head, but I know it's not 4,000.
I saw somebody the other day trying to 35. So you were close, 35-41. Somebody the other day was trying to say something like bragging about his completion percentage and interceptions on how many throws, and they were comparing it to like Jane Daniels. And I'm like, hey, here's a stat that's, you might want to look at. Let's look at his yards per attempt. It's like you're not going to get picked off a whole lot, and you're going to complete a lot of passes when you're throwing a bunch of short throws.
Well, when he did it at the time, it was like Caleb Williams breaks the Bears rookie franchise record for passing touchdowns by a rookie quarterback. You know what that number was that he had to beat? 11.
Are you serious?
Swear to God.
And those for rookie passing touchdowns?
Yeah.
Who had that record? Is it Jim McMahon?
I am not sure off the top of my head,
I'm
but
gonna
I
look it
remember
up real
seeing
quick.
that. It was
Most
nuts.
touchdown passes in a season by a Chicago Bears rookie.
Caleb Williams, I think.
I want to
just
see
passed it.
I want to see whose record he broke. It was for a rookie. It was. Let's see here. Where's touchdowns? It was Charlie O'Rourke, and 1940 something. And then number 3 was Kyle Orton with 9, and he was actually tied with Jim McMahon for third with 9. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
1942.
One of the other crazier sports stats that I've ever seen.
Yeah.
It's like 11. You play 16 games.
Yeah. And he threw for the most yards, but his yards per attempt was 0.3 lower than Mitch Trubisky and 0.6 lower than Justin Fields. So, but he was 0.1 better than Cade McNown, so that's good. That's good. Goodness gracious.
Mm-hmm.
That's good. 11.
Yeah, that was crazy because I saw the stat and I was like,
somebody acted like they had some really cool thing. Like, here's a set record for Bears score.
Well, because it was something like Caleb Williams breaks the rookie franchise record for the Bears in like week 10. And I was like, oh, shoot. And then I looked, I was like, 13 touchdowns. So I was like, what?
Yeah.
Then I looked it up. I was like, oh, it's 11.
Yeah.
Okay.
Domer Chris says, you're telling me the guy they traded multiple first-round picks for to take ahead of Patrick Mahomes didn't throw for more than 10 touchdowns in his rookie season? You are correct.
That is correct.
Oh, man. That is really funny. I want to see how many games Charlie O'Rourke played in 1942. They played in 11 games, by the way, that year. He threw 88 passes.
Shoot, man, 11 of them were touchdowns. That guy's a baller.
16 of them were interceptions. So,
so like almost a third of his passes were either really good or just terrible.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. Holy cow.
Oh boy. Glad I didn't have to watch football back then. Very glad I didn't have to watch football back then. Coach Bent trying to make us think today. Let's go to this one next.
Coach Bent with a two-parter. In the 2009 Navy game, the 52-yard touchdown pass was set up by Navy, covering up the slot wide receiver in the first half. Then they adjusted the formation to make him eligible on that play. Can you point to other Notre Dame moments where in-game schematic adjustments made a huge impact in the game?
Well, I don't know if. Well, I would say we saw the one we saw this year that was really impactful. And we talked about it last week was against Louisville. They were having trouble getting off the line. So when they needed to get a big play on that, when Louisville had scored to make it 24-17, they kicked a field goal to make it 24-17. And on that next drive, Notre Dame did a little zip motion from Jaden Harrison and ran a slot fade concept that just turned him wide open. And then to finish that drive off, they did a sprint out because they've been sprinting out all game, just like not all game, but a lot that game, doing Riley just little quick half rolls and throwing the ball quick. They'd start doing it like first drive. And then kind of did that and then threw back to Jeremiah Love for a screen pass. So like sold that action, got them to overcommit, threw back on it. That would be one. Coach, there's a lot of good ones. I'd have to really think about that. I mean, I thought the adjustments they made, I thought the halftime adjustments they made against Penn State on both sides of the ball were exceptional. That was a great. I mean, you saw Notre Dame just kind of going to quick downhill runs, but then also recognizing how they were playing coverage, so they decided to have Kedron Young or Aeneas Williams go out most. That was something I think they kind of looked at halftime and they're like, "Hey, let's go do this. We think we can get this when we go nickel and Aeneas does this, their linebacker goes with them. So let's run this." Defensively, just kind of being more physical on the edge. making some adjustments, widening the ends out a little bit, letting them be more physical, forcing not letting the inside zone stretch as much, which is what they were killing Notre Dame with in the first half. Like, those were some really good adjustments. Some just individual play calls. I remember they there was a I'm trying to remember what game it was, but there's something 2018. One of the best calls Chip Long ever made was in that USC game in 2018. And the way that Notre Dame was running, they would run a buck sweep and a G scheme, so they'd pull guards. The way that USC was playing defense that game, as soon as the guards would move, USC would just fly downhill, just trying to blow. Because remember what happened to USC the year before. They tried to sit back, and Notre Dame just ran it down their throat. So what they were doing in this game in 18 was they would, when the lineman would move, they would just crash the lineman. Notre Dame was having trouble getting the run game going. So what Chip Long did in that game is he basically put Dexter Williams to the right, and he ran buck sweep with the line to the right. So both guards pull, and USC just crashes. But he runs Dexter opposite just on an outside play. He had one guy backside blocking. I think it was Cole Kmet. And so USC crashes, and Dexter just kind of gets outside and just runs for like a 50-yard touchdown. Great in-game play call. Because it's like, schematically, you're like, there's nobody to block for him. Your line's not blocking for him. But if they're going to play this way, they won't have anybody out there. If Cole makes his block, it's a touchdown. Great in-game adjustment. And that really kind of was the play that really started to break that game open, Trev. I'm actually it wasn't the score that tied it. I don't believe. I think the Chris Fink touchdown pass is the one that tied it, but I could be wrong on that. Let me just go look up the box score from that year. Give me 1 second. So that'd be 2018. What the Dex touchdown was. Yeah, no, it was actually put him ahead. So the Fink touchdown made it 10-7. They were down 10-0. And that Fink touchdown, which I still to this day, Trev will say was the best ball Ian Book ever threw. I went back and looked at that the other day, just like remember, like, okay, was it really that good of a pass? I'm like, yep, it was that good of a pass. If you don't remember that play, go back and watch the highlights of that game. And that throw that Ian made on that corner route was elite. And then go watch the Dexter Williams touchdown run. You'll see that as well. But that was just a great play call, because that was just a reaction to this is what they're doing. And we've got to do something to kind of counter it. And he makes that call, and they go off. But that put them up 14-10, and then they never trailed again. And that was big because they were 11-0. If they don't win that game, they may not make the college football playoffs in 2018. They needed that game. And that was a great play call. Just broke the game open. And Notre Dame never looked back. And it was early in the third quarter. So the timing of it was one of those ones, Trev, where you're kind of like I think it was their first possession of the second half. Let me go look that up real quick. Just give me a second. End of the half. No, they went 3 and out on the first drive. They were backed up at their own 25, and then their next drive they come out. First play, Ian Book throws a ball to Alizé Mack, gives him some room, and then on that next play, Dexter goes yard. So I'm actually going to pull that up here real quick. But yeah, that was a great in-game play call in a big game, it's if you don't win this game, you're not playing for a title. And USC had all the momentum in that game early. And that was just an absolutely just great play call by Chip Long in that particular moment.
Yeah, in the spirit of good rivalries, that was also the first time that I saw a Notre Dame player kind of throw the deuces down.
Oh, really? Did Dex do that?
Yeah, that was like the first. I'm sure they had done it before, but that was the first time I remember. He went on that 50-yard touchdown run, went into the end zone, and just hit him with the real quick. So
I love it. I'm going to watch that right now. I just went back and watched that throw from Ian. Was still just freaking great. That was such a good throw.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it was on the money.
So they lined up. Notre Dame lined up on that touchdown run. They're in a bunch formation. They got Chase Claypool and Cole Kmet to the left, double bunch. They've got 2 receivers to the right. So USC's condensed, and they run their guards to go buck sweep. USC's linebackers don't know what to do. You got Claypool doesn't even touch the corner. Cole Kmet blocks the linebacker, and it's Dex in space against a safety, and that kid, a safety that was coming from like depth, and he had no chance against Dex. And Dex just outran him to the sideline, and the kid pretended to fall down because he knew he was going to catch him, and scored from 52. I see it now. He went like this, and then that's awesome. I don't remember that.
That was the first time that I remember, because in the USC crowd they throw up like the peace sign for victory.
Yeah,
and ever since then I see Notre Dame players do it all the time, and
that's freaking great.
Love it.
That's great. Yeah, it was a great play call. Absolutely great play call. So, yeah, very well done. Very well done. I think another great, but I don't know if this was an in-game adjustment because it happened early in the game. That reverse that Notre Dame called against Florida State in 1993 was a phenomenal play call. But that was early in the game. I don't think that was an adjustment as much as it was they knew Florida State was fast, and they had to do something to slow them down. And that was, run it to a player that doesn't touch the ball a whole lot. was Adrian Jarrell, I think, who it went to. So that's a good one. Yeah.
Good deal. Aiden Benami, thoughts on who claims the draft pick? Does Duke count Riley Leonard as well? I think it's kind of weird in a sense. Schools claim a person who they had for 1 year at the same time. Obviously understand.
I would claim. I mean, if I'm Duke, I'd claim him. And you're the one that developed them. But at the end of the day, it's who you finished with is who gets counted as the draft pick. So it's Notre Dame. But if I was Duke, I'd be like, yeah. If I'm recruiting, I'm like, yeah, we did a great job developing Riley Leonard. Heck, he had his best passing season playing for us. So it's both. It's both as far as being able to claim it, but when you look at the records, it's always who you transferred, who you finished with. Like Navy's not claiming Alohi Gilman.
I'm okay as long as the player played at the previous school. Like once, I think it was like after Quinn Ewers got drafted late, like I saw an Ohio State account to it. It's like notable Ohio State quarterbacks in the league. And the first one was Joe Burrow. And it's like, guys, like Joe Burrow himself has even said, I went to school at Ohio State. I played football at LSU. Quinn Ewers is not an Ohio State quarterback. So as long as they played meaningful minutes, like Riley Leonard was their whole team in 22 and 23 with some good supporting members. But so I'm okay with it because he played. But if you were just a third string guy and transferred and then broke out, like Texas Tech doesn't try to claim Baker Mayfield.
Right.
He's an Oklahoma quarterback. So Georgia doesn't try to claim Justin Fields.
So Ohio State's trying to claim Joe Burrow and
they've been doing that. They've been trying to claim Joe Burrow for.
That's funny. And they're also trying to claim Quinn Ewers.
Yep.
It's funny.
Yep.
That's lame. That's really lame. Joe Burrow threw at least Joe Burrow threw 39 passes at Ohio State and 2 touchdowns. I mean, you could at least say he played a little as a backup, but I don't think Quinn Ewers played it down did he even play it down at Ohio State? Let me go look.
No idea.
Did he throw any? I mean, that's lame. Yeah, he played 1 game, threw 0 passes. Come on, dude. Let's be serious here. You shouldn't claim that. That's like Notre Dame trying to claim Dorsey Levens so Ohio State fans, do you take Kent Graham off your list of quarterbacks since he started his career at Notre Dame? Through his first career pass in Notre Dame, do you guys count him as a NFL quarterback at Ohio State? Just curious. That's lame. But, consider who it is.
Aiden Benami.
Good for you, Archer. You're cool.
But not our guy Archer.
No, he doesn't count. He doesn't live in Ohio. He doesn't count.
Looks like Manshawn S has an NIL agent. You don't have to answer if you don't want to, but it seems like these might be the bad actors people refer to.
No, I mean, look, I think that's throwing everybody in the same under the bus that's in the same thing. I don't think you need an NIL agent nowadays. Like you're allowed to. It's in the rules, and B, you should. Like what do I know about going out and getting NIL deals for my kid? If let's say Dylan was Vince's kid was getting NIL offers, or let's say he was a quarterback going D1. What does Vince know about going out there and getting brand deals for his kid? You hire someone to do that. You give them a percentage of the cut. Like that, and then you can focus on playing football and going to school and doing all that kind of stuff. You should have that. It's like with anything. I bang on lawyers all the time. I know a lot of good lawyers. I know a lot of good, honest, hardworking, smart, faithful lawyers who just want to make sure they're doing right by people and protecting people, or protecting the city, whether it's defending criminals, like people, or not criminals, defending people accused of crimes, or prosecuting criminals. I mean, they're all on both sides. But there's also a lot of bad ones. It's like when there's a profession where there's that many people, there's going to be corrupt ones and dirty ones, or ones who just like power. It's like police officers. Is every police officer a saint? No. But the majority that I know are good men who are out there trying to serve their community in the best way they can. Are there police officers that abuse their power and authority? Absolutely. We see that. But when you start saying, well, all police officers are this, no, you're not smart now. It's the same thing with agents. Are there some very bad, corrupt agents that are just looking to screw kids over? Absolutely. I see some of these like Twitter lawyers that are always talking about how they want this for college players. You don't want that for them. You want that for you. You're not looking out for student athletes. You're looking out for you, because you and your firm are going to just eat up and make tons of money. It's this big new giant revenue stream for you to mooch off of. Is every NIL lawyer like that? Is every NIL agent like that? Of course not. There's some who say, you know what? I love the law. I love college football. I want to do right by these kids. I want to help them out best I can. Of course, I'm not doing it for free, because I got a family to take care of too. But I'm also not going to go out here and do it in a way that's where I'm going to take advantage of this family, or take advantage of this kid or this situation, just so I can do my own thing. It's just unfair to say that. I hope that Monshun has a great NIL agent who's going to truly help him. Hey, Burrow, wherever you want to go, you pick where you want to go, and then I'll make sure that I get you the deals you need to go once you get there. And I'll get you deals now in high school. There's nothing wrong with that. So with anything else, man, there's people that do what I do that are good people. There's people that do what I do that are a-holes. There's doctors out there that are good, wonderful people that just want to help people. And then there's doctors out there that aren't. There's people in the military that are great people, and ones you're like, dude, I'd never let my daughter date that guy. That's true for every profession. And I don't think it's fair to say, just because someone has an NIL agent, we assume that person's a bad actor. Here's the reality. NIL is here. NIL is part of the business. NIL is part of the deal. These young men should look to make the most of their opportunities right now, because a large percentage, over 90% of these players, will never play professional football. This is your one window to be able to take advantage of monetizing your talent as a football player. The one guaranteed window, because you're not guaranteed, to be good in college. You're not guaranteed to be an NFL player. You just hope that the people that you hire are good and faithful and honest people that are trying to do right by you, not use you for their own personal gain. And I don't think it's fair to assume that every NIL agent out there is a bad actor. Some people who do that are bad actors. There's no doubt. But that's true of every profession, including mine, including what you did before, Trev, including, like Ryan was a teacher before he came here. There's teachers who are just amazing people. And there's teachers who are absolute scumbags who should never be around children. So I'm not going to throw every single person that's part of that under the bus and say, well, because this guy's bad, things are bad. You see people do that with like Catholic priests all the time. Just because you're a Catholic priest, it's assumed that you're this kind of person because of these things that happen. The majority of them are not that way. It's like you could find that with everything. There's good and bad. Doesn't make the profession. For the most, there's some professional, I'm like, yeah, there's no good people in there. You know what I mean? Like, oh, you're in the mob, right? Okay, yeah, you're not that good mobster in the movies. Like, no, you're pretty bad. You're pretty awful. So there's other things. But it's like with anything. Andrew Gilmore says NFL Players Union certifies agents. College players should get the same. I agree with that. There needs to be but this is the problem we're in, right, Andrew? Is like there are no guardrails. There are no rules. There are no regulations. The NCAA is completely derelict in their duties. And the reality is they kind of have to be, because if they did try to put guardrails down, what's going to happen? Somebody's going to sue them, and they're going to lose. That's the reality. But that's the sad part of what we're in. But let's not assume that every person that's getting involved with these young people is doing it for nefarious reasons. I think that's unfair. That's absolutely unfair. And I know some people, some players who have agents that just like, oh, wow, he did that for you. Like, that's the advice he gave. Like, oh, that's pretty awesome. There's a Notre Dame player that was thinking about making a decision last year. Should he go pro or not? And his agent gave him advice that was not good for the agent about coming back and doing different things. And it's like, but he's like, this is why he felt it was right for Xavier. He kept always talking about, like, this is help getting you prepared to be the best player you can be. And not every agent was that way. Some were trying to talk to that kid about, hey, go pro, man. Look, come with us. We'll get you to the pro and we'll do that. You want people that are going to do right by you. And like every profession, there's good people and bad people. And I hope that every kid can find a good one.
Not sales, bro. We're all awesome.
You know that ain't true. Why aren't you still doing it then, Trev? I'm just curious about that.
What?
You're just saying that because you were awesome. You're just assuming that everybody was like you.
Yeah. Oh, man. Bobby S., what's your opinion on the offer to Fitzgerald and the decommit from Brown from USC? Is it first 2 or 3 are of Finley, Robinson, Williams, Fitz, Brown, maybe Bonner? What's a realistic finish for wide receiver?
Well, I don't think Bonner's an option. I honestly don't know right now Notre Dame's pecking order at receiver. So I'll speak to those 2 commitments or those 2 offers, and then we'll dive into kind of what the plan is right now. I think to a degree, there's a first come, first serve to a degree, but the Brown kid, Trev, you and I are watching this film before we get started. Like, he's a really talented player. I don't understand his ranking at all. A buddy of mine who I know who's a pretty hard evaluator, like, he's very picky. He's like sitting there, it's like, oh, God, this guy reminds me of Malik Neighbors. And I'm like, let's pump the brakes a little bit, brother. But you see the skill, you see the speed, you see the body type. It's very similar to Malik Neighbors. I'm not like, let's chill out. But Malik Neighbors wasn't a very highly ranked player coming out of high school either. But what's funny about him, and we'll probably talk more about him. Sean and I will probably talk a little about him on Monday. We're going to do something on the receiving core on Monday for the goodness gracious, the RTCF. But Malik Neighbors coming out of high school was ranked number 135 by On3, 150 by 247 Sports, 4-star unranked by Rivals, and a 3-star by ESPN. So he wasn't considered. What he became is not what he was considered coming out of high school. But Fitzgerald, I understand that offer because he's a boundary. Like, they need a boundary. I think they need a boundary receiver in this class, and I like him. He's a guy you take a chance on the genes. Like, right now, he's a good player right now. Good route runner, strong hands, understands the game, good athlete, but he's not like an elite guy. But you say, but that's Larry Fitzgerald's kid. And you wonder, like, is there another level of, like, we look at the growth that Elijah Burris made from his junior to senior year, and the growth that Bryce Young made from his sophomore to senior season. Like, sophomore year, you're like, this kid can't play at Notre Dame, but hey, I understand the offer because he's got the frame and he's got this, and his dad's a Hall of Famer. But he didn't look like a Notre Dame football player when he was a sophomore. By his senior year, like, dude, this is one of the best DNs in the country. Because the DNA eventually kicked in and he grew into that body. So I understand the Devin Fitzgerald one. Like I said, he's a good football player. What Devin Fitzgerald lacks is he just lacks explosiveness right now. But he's smooth. He's a good athlete. He's just not an explosive athlete. Good route runner, great hands. I mean, you'd expect Larry Fitzgerald's kid to have great hands, and he does. But he also plays at Brophy Prep, and for some reason, that school continues to just be under like this players from that. I mean, how many good players from there have to come out before people start saying we should probably start evaluating these kids properly? Obviously Benjamin Morrison's from there and Creed Thomas is from there, but so I get that one because there's just not a lot of boundaries on the board right now. Brian Williams is one. Brian Williams might have a little bit more upside potentially based on what we see now. I don't know that I agree with that. I kind of like Devin Fitzgerald a little bit more than him right now. But so I think those two guys are kind of competing for a spot. And then you've got Caden Finley and Keemon Brown are kind of similar players. And then obviously, Braden Robinson's a different kind of player. I mean, he's part running back, part slot, part return man. Like, he can do a lot of different things. Like, he's just a different cat. So I think they're at 4. There's a question down there from Brandon that I'll get to. that's related to this. I'll just bring that up now. But Brandon says, with the new roster limits, could you see the staff taking 5 wide receivers in the 2026 class? I think it's possible. I think you at least need to consider it at this point in time. I do. I think you have to look at it and say, hey, for where we are numbers wise and kind of what we need and some different things we're trying to do, it's what I can yeah, I'd consider it. I'd consider it because there's just a couple kids in the class that Bubba Frazier and Braden Robinson are kind of similar guys, but what's one thing they can both do? Run really fast. And what's one thing you are without a doubt trying to add more of to your receiving core? Guys that run really fast. So it's like, okay, maybe in most years you wouldn't add 2 guys like that, but in this case you're maybe trying to add 2. And then you look at Keemon Brown, he runs a 10.6. That's pretty fast for, he was I think a 10.8 as a sophomore. He's a 10.6 now. That's moving pretty good. You don't get to see it as much on film because in the slot, he's doing a lot of reading and reacting. But there's a couple times, Trev, you and I are watching film where you're just like, first time I watched him, I'm like, oh, is this kid really got juice? Like he's a good athlete. You can see. And then there's like a couple slot fades. He just kind of, and you're like, whoa, okay. Now you see there's a couple times it's like he's looking for a crease and then he hits the crease and just takes the ball and just, you're like, okay, there it is. There's the 10.6. And that's why I think that maybe he could project outside, even though he plays slot in high school. I actually like him as an outside guy more. I think he can do both, but I even like him more as an outside guy. So I think they're going to try to get to 5, but it would only be the right guys. I don't know that it's something that they're going to say, okay, if you get these 2, like right now they have 2 receiver commits, right? Dylan Faison, Bubba Frazier. Let's just say hypothetically, for argument's sake, they get Braden Robinson and Keemon Brown, just for argument's sake. And I'm not saying they're committed. They're not committed. I'm just saying, let's just say they did for argument's sake. Well, 4's the number you wanted to get to. 5's a lot. But A, you're not saying no to Caden Finley, ever, number 1. And number 2, you're like, we're still a boundary short. And so if Brian Williams has a big senior year, or if you really like Devin Fitzgerald and you decide you need to go to 5 because you just don't have enough of the body types you need on your roster, then I understand that going to 5. And that's the reality of where they are. So I think they're willing to do it. It's not a given, but I think they're at least willing to consider it for this class.
Fair enough.
Let me see here. There was a couple more along these lines that I thought were related to this topic that we can just go ahead and kind of get out of the way now. Jacob Hayden says Cohen Brown comp and how he stacks up against top guys on the current board. I haven't thought of a comp yet for him, Jacob. That's usually like the last thing I do. It's not like the first thing I do. I told you the one my buddy said. I don't remember Malik. I don't know that I saw Malik Neighbors a lot in high school, so I can't compare him to Malik Neighbors, and it's unfair for me to compare high school junior to what I saw in college. Similar body type, similar, speed as a young player. Malik got a lot faster as he got older, as most guys do. But how he compares, I mean, look, he's the most natural outside guy on the board as far as a Z. Him and Caden Finley are both natural outside receivers. It's funny I say that because he doesn't play outside in high school. But when I say natural outside, I'm talking about the skill set needed to play that position. He's 6 feet tall. He's really fast. He's got very good hands. He's athletic enough. He's not a great route runner now, Trev, but he's got the athleticism to develop into one. He can stretch the field from the outside, which I like. He's good after the catch, which you need for that position, and he's got the body to be able to do the digs and the Z's. I mean, if Chris Mitchell can play outside body type wise, this kid can, because Chris was a $178, and Will Fuller was a $180 playing Z. So it's not like you need, like, I think a lot of people think like your Z ideally needs to be like, a Chase Claypool on one side, Miles Boykin on the other side. And that's not really what the Z is. I think Keemon Brown can play that. And of course he can play the slot. You've seen that. But I actually think his best position is Z in this offense. That may not be true for other offenses, but certainly is for this offense. And so I think that's the thing I like. Him and Caden Finley are the two natural outside guys, and I think you need at least one of them. So it's an interesting offer. I'd never seen him before yesterday. So because I saw he's friends with Javion Osborne, and he was at his commitment, and so was Braden Robinson. And then Javion starts tweeting about him, and you're just like, okay, that's kind of random. And then I knew that Notre Dame was down at his high school within the last week. Like, okay, let's see where this goes. And then, of course, he decommits from USC today, and you're like, well, that's interesting. So just have to let it play out and see how it goes.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I like him.
Bobby S., after Finley and O'Brien, who would you say are the three next most important recruits for the 26 class? I know he is official visiting, but do we really have a shot at, I'm going to butcher that last name, I'm sorry.
It's McHugh, Grayson McHugh.
At McHugh, the offensive lineman from Pennsylvania, or is he all Penn State?
Anyone telling you he's all Penn State's a lying to you or doesn't know what they're talking about. I would say worst case scenario, it's 50-50. I like where Notre Dame is right now for Grayson McHugh. The official visit will be key, but yes, they have a legitimate shot to get him. It is them and Penn State. Ohio State's offered recently. I believe Bama got involved recently, but he's Notre Dame or Penn State. So I like that one. Three most important recruits. Look, they're at 14 commits right now, and I would like to see them get up to at least 25. That means they need at least 11. I don't know that I'm ready to say there's the three most important because there's a lot. I mean, you could name three most important and just stick on the D line. I could say, look, Dre Quinn, Kerry Wilder, and Tiki Hola. Just stay there. Not even talk about Joey O'Brien because he said Joe O'Brien. Not even get into Grayson McHugh or some other needs. I mean, there's some players on the board they still need to get. Grayson McHugh's a big one. I think they really need a pure tackle in this class. So I'm not ready to dive into who are the three. Look, I think right now the positions that Notre Dame needs to load up on right now that need the most work right now are D-line still, because I think they need a 5-man class at least, and receiver. They've got to finish well at those two positions. Honestly, they're going to get more DBs, but they're just so loaded there, Trev. You've already got two corners committed. If you're able to get Joey O'Brien, honestly, if they got Joey O'Brien and didn't take another DB, okay. If they got Kerry Adams and didn't take another DB and missed Joey O'Brien, I'm like, all right.
Yeah.
If you get Kerry Adams and Nick Reddish to finish this class off and that's it, okay, dude, you're so young and loaded there. It's go get some dudes. I mean, Aiden Pouncey can play all around, and Chasten Smith even has some flexibility there. Mike Mickens loves Nick Reddish a lot. Kerry Adams is a high ceiling guy at corner. I mean, he can freaking fly. I think I saw some of the other day. He ran a 10.4 or 10.3 recently. Something crazy like that. Actually, let me go look that up, make sure that I'm not saying something out of hand, but I thought I saw that from him recently. Let me go look that up here. What was the 300? What was the 100 time he had recently? It was something. It was moving, dude. It was something fast. Dude.
He was cooking.
Wow. Let me find it. He's got a 6.45 indoor. That's moving. See, that one says 10.7 in his best, but I could have swore he had something faster than that recently. I saw something that had him at 10.3 or 10.4. So I'd have to go find it, but I don't see it there. Some of these things are so funny. They're off very much, but I'll try and find that, Trev, and see if I can find that one. So,
yeah,
but yeah, I mean, D-line and receiver, they got to finish strong there. You need Tiki Hola. You need, I want another big edge, Dre Quinn, Mikhail Blade. Kari Wilder's a guy that I'm like, God, that's a must-get guy in this class, dude. I love his film. Absolutely love his film and his potential. It's talk about a Riley Mills type of guy. Everybody talks about Joe O'Brien, and Joe O'Brien he's a burner, but he's a great player. There's no doubt. But if you get Kari Adams, that's another guy that's absolutely moving. So yeah, I'm just not ready to say there's three, because I feel like if I say three, then it's like, well, this guy's not important or that guy's not important, or somebody will be like, well, what about this guy? What about that guy? Okay. I was asked to give the 3. I don't know what you want me to do here. So I say load up on D-line, load up on receiver. That's really where I want to see this class finish strong.
Receiver was going to be the answer for me as well. That's the one position that needs to add more guys.
I think interior D-line as well. Just because when you look at, like, you're losing Rubio after this year, you're losing Onye after this year, you're losing Jared Dawson after this year, you're losing Elijah Hughes after 2026, unless Notre Dame wants to sit down and have a conversation with Elijah Hughes about maybe if he's not in the 2 deep this year, do you redshirt him?
That's true.
I would seriously think about that with Elijah Hughes. Redshirt him so he has 2 more years after that, because he's going into his true junior year because he played more redshirt than more games than you need to redshirt in his last 2 years at USC. And then you've got some other guys that have some injury history, Brennan Vernon with the knee and some different things. Like, are you really locked into where your depth chart is, like, you're set there? I think D tackle is all I put on the same level as receiver, is where you got to do very well in this class.
That's good.
But offensively, receivers, I mean, you could say they need another quarterback, they need an alignment, but they've got all those already. And obviously tight end is a big one too. I do think tight end is a very important position in the 26 cycle. Very important.
Yeah. Because
you're not going to have Eli Raridan after this year. You're not going to have Kevin Bauman after this year. You're only going to have 1 year of Ty Washington. He has 2 years left. He actually has 2 years left, I believe. But, what's he going to do for you? Don't know. So you're going to be in 2026, you're going to have Ty Washington, Jack Larson, and James Flanagan is all you have right now. So,
Cooper Flanagan. Oh, well, Cooper Flanagan. But
if he comes back. But the Achilles has me a little bit nervous about that. You are correct. That's another one. And then, maybe Cooper takes a red shirt this year and he gets an extra year. That might actually be kind of smart, is just take a year to get yourself back to being healthy. But your numbers still aren't great. You've got Ian Premer, Matt Ludwig, and Evan Jacobson. You got to land 2 of those 3, in my opinion. You got to land 2 of those 3. So, and they went out this past week. They saw Jacobson again. They saw Premer again. They saw Matt Ludwig recently as well. So they're definitely making a run at them, but you've got to finish with 2 of those 3. You need at least 1 of them for sure, but I think you need 2 of the 3.
Agreed.
I think you need to get Jacobson, then you need one of – Jacobson is a little bit more of a James Flanagan, Cooper Flanagan type, whereas Premer and Ludwig are a little bit more of the movement guys. But, Premer's my number 1 tight on the board right now. I think that kid's a dude. So you get him and Jacobson, and I'm like – that's loaded. I'm good.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's where I am on I am a little bit on that one.
Good deal. Yep. ND, it just means more. Had Heathstand still been coaching at Notre Dame right now, the starting offensive line would likely be from left to right: Jagasaw, Schrouth, Craig, Pendleton, Wagner.
Well, the interesting thing on that is that I think Absher would be starting, actually. But or Gerby. I mean, I think Absher or Gerby would be in there somewhere. I don't think it's a given that Harry Heastand wouldn't have moved Jagasaw inside. I just think Coach Heastand would have done a better job of getting Gerby Lambert ready to play. Yeah. The thing is, the reason I don't say Anthony Knapp is because he didn't get recruited. He wouldn't have been recruited by Harry Heastand. Coach Heastand didn't look at Anthony Knapp. He was looking at that's not really his type of lineman. So I would say Absher or Jagasaw, or Absher or Lambert would be there instead of Pendleton.
I would agree. Yep, I would agree with that.
All right. Let's see here. Here's a schedule one.
John A1, if Notre Dame could sign 2 more teams to a deal similar to the Clemson deal, who would you choose? Any team in the country, Navy not included, because there's an annual agreement already.
Well, I would still want USC, because he didn't say Navy. I would still want USC to be one. So, John, if you're not including USC, I would include USC. If you're including USC, so I'll answer it both ways. So, USC and Michigan State are the 2 that I would sign, and I've made that very clear. if you're not including USC. If you're including USC, let's say they just re-up, then Michigan State's obviously 1. Then after that, I've kind of already talked about this. I would look to a Pitt, a Boston College, a bit more of a traditional northern rival. I would look to. I don't know that there's any team in the SEC that I really care to sign a 12-year deal with. The only one that I would consider would be probably Tennessee. Would be the only one that I would consider. There's nobody in the Big 12 that I want to play for 12 straight years. There's nobody in the Big 10 outside of Michigan State that I really care. Purdue is fine. I don't care about playing Purdue every single year. I'd rather play Michigan State than Purdue. There's similar programs. I think Michigan State's better, but also getting to play in Michigan. There's better talent in the state of Michigan. And I just think that rivalry means more in a lot of reasons. Again, a lot of the reasons that I despise Michigan are why I like Michigan State. They're the one school that fought to have Notre Dame in the Big Ten. So it'd be Michigan State for me. Yeah, it'd probably be Pitt or Boston College. There's just like Miami. I get the Miami thing. As I've said before, Trev, I think that's a rivalry that I like. I don't know that I need it every single year. I kind of think part of the allure of that rivalry is a bit of like I said, a breathing period, like 4 on, 2 off, or 4 on, 4 off, 4 on, 4 off, something like that. I think probably go 4 on, 2 off, 4 on, 2 off if I sign something like that. So if I could have that kind of deal, then I'd be more interested in playing Miami, or 2 on, 2 off, 2 on, 2 off, something like that. I'd be more interested in that than every year. I don't really care about playing Florida State every year. Florida State and Notre Dame right now have the perfect rivalry or perfect schedule. They play once every few years, and sometimes they'll play in back-to-back years, but it's not every single year, and that's fine for me with Florida State. So I'd say USC, Michigan State. If you are including Michigan State, then I would throw Boston College in there. I don't care about playing anyone else all the time. I would say I'd love to play this team in a home and home. I'd love to play that team in a home and home. I don't care about having a 12-year schedule with anybody else outside of the teams that, Michigan State, Purdue, Boston College, Pitt, maybe Miami, and USC and Navy. That's really it. I don't care about playing Stanford all the time. They bring no value to me right now for Notre Dame. We'll have a Stanford question here in a second, but that's where I'm at on that.
Yeah, again, I think you guys know my stance on this too. If we're not including USC in this list already, I would go USC, Michigan, and then
you're definitely in the majority on that, I believe, Trev. I do think most Notre Dame fans would like to have Michigan as a regular opponent on the schedule. I do.
Yeah, I would too, especially given their recent success, honestly. But I would say Michigan and USC. But if we can't do USC as well, I'd probably go one of the teams that you said. Pitt, because Notre Dame has played them, what you said, 5th most all time. I would hear out Miami or Florida State just to get a constant presence down in Florida. But if I had to choose between one of them, I'd probably go Miami. But that's just personal preference.
So you were earlier talking about how you'd like to get that Miami rivalry on there. If you could only choose between the two, Miami or Michigan, who would you go with?
Michigan. It's because I grew up with the Michigan one.
I get that.
And so every time I've watched Notre Dame play Miami, it's never been a close game either side.
That's right, yeah.
And so I know it from the slogans, like the Catholics versus convicts. Yeah. I've seen the 88 game, but every time I've gotten to watch it live, one of the teams gets trounced.
16 was the only close game, right? I think that was the only close game they've played in.
Was that 30 to 27?
Or since 1990, yeah. I mean, and that was a crap Notre Dame team.
Yeah. Tyler Ottinger, do you see Stanford returning to a perennial 9-win team with the direction Andrew Luck is taking them?
I don't. No, I think that window was a big part of the success that period of time. It was Jim Harbaugh's a phenomenal coach. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. He's an elite coach. He's weird. He's do this, he's that. The guy's an elite coach. He won at San Diego. He won at Stanford. He won with the Niners, took them to the Super Bowl, won at Michigan. And even before if you want to say, well, I don't count the championship, because, whatever, he cheated and all that, that's fine. But even when you look at the success he had early in his career before all that, I mean, he still had some very good teams in his career, even before the whole cheating thing. I don't know that he would have had the success later in his career, but he still won 10 games in 3 of his first 4 seasons. Just couldn't beat Ohio State. That was really his big issue. But guy's a heck of a coach. I just don't see that again. I really don't. I don't think Stanford's support is going to support the program the way they need to. Stanford should be able to win because that school's got money.
Mm-hmm.
But I just don't think they care enough to support the football team. Like if Stanford was like in the Southeast, oh my gosh, you'd have to be worried about them because you'd have a lot more alums that cared about football than you do now. So no, I think they had a nice little flash in the pan. I don't see them recruiting, and I don't think the state of California produces the kind of players that you really need anymore to sustain all the different things that you need to sustain. So I don't see them getting back, and they've got a long way to go. You could argue their program now is worse than it was when Jim Harbaugh took over.
Oh gosh, yeah. I mean, look, here's the thing. He
inherited a bad situation, by the way, Trev, but this is bad.
Well, this is awful. I've been saying it for years. California is just not a state that cares about football. I mean, you can look at college, you can look at the NFL. The Rams moved back there. They have more away fans at their games than home fans. I'm glad that you said flash in a pan because Stanford from 2010 to 2018, outside of 2014, was a 9-win team every season. But outside of that, it was just moments. They were a 10-win team in 92, didn't have another 9-win season until 2001, and then didn't have another 9-win season until 2010. And that's just kind of consistent with their history going back and back and back. And so, I don't see them returning to that. I think Andrew Luck is just in a little bit of a pinch because I'd make the argument that there's no direction right now because of all the moving pieces. You got 50 players leaving. You got 37 coming in. You have an interim head coach. Tyler, to answer your question, I would wait this year after this season to see what direction Andrew Luck is kind of leading the program. Because right now, he is, for lack of a better term, just kind of drinking out of a fire hose and trying to put out whatever dumpster fire this is right now.
But there's only so much he can do.
Exactly.
The reason I say no is because I don't see that school ever supporting football the way you need to support football to win. They got lucky. Everything went right from 2010 to 2018. And what I mean by that is you had Notre Dame was not a recruiting juggernaut during that period of time. And so they just were beating Notre Dame for kids left and right that used to go to Notre Dame. Paulson Adibos, Blake Luters. I mean, this Tom Carter's kid went to Stanford and became an NFL player. So Notre Dame wasn't a powerhouse. USC was down during that stretch. The Pac-12 overall was starting its descent as a conference. He also was incredibly smart to say the league everyone was chasing USC for a decade. In Oregon. And so speed. We've got to keep up with what USC is building athletically, and then we got to keep up with what Mike Bellotti and Chip Kelly are doing over at Oregon. Because remember, Chip Kelly was the OC before he became the head coach. And it was spread the field, speed. Stanford came in and said, okay, now everybody's undersized and small. So what we're going to do is we're going to come in and we're going to go play big boy football, and we're going to run it down your throat. And you are not going to be able to recruit to stop us and stop Oregon. And it was perfect. And he made great hires. I mean, Vic Fangio, he hires David Shaw. Then David Shaw takes over and keeps doing what he was doing. And so they were able to recruit at a high level, but then the game started to change. The recruiting game started to change. Early enrollees become more of a thing. Then all of a sudden you get, the transfer portal. There's all these different things that were going on. Stanford for a while there wouldn't let them bring in early enrollees. So a kid could be a genius student, but you're not going to let him be an early enrollee because that's not what you do. Like, you're done. You have no chance to win that way. And so and then of course, you get Andrew Luck and all that. But it wasn't just the Andrew Luck show. Those teams were great on defense back then too. It was the perfect storm for them to get good. And then as soon as Chip Kelly takes them to the title, he leaves. So Jim Harbaugh's 11 team and then all of David Shaw's team, they weren't going against a Chip Kelly Oregon team. And Pete Carroll was gone by 2009. So it was really perfect time. A great coach at the perfect time where USC was down. Oregon was running something completely different. Notre Dame wasn't the same team. They owned Notre Dame early in that series. I mean, they beat Notre Dame in 9, 10, 11, 13, 15, 16. And it wasn't until 2017 that Notre Dame took control back of that series.
Yeah. Well, Notre Dame had like 2 wins on the road against Stanford from like 07 to 19. They ended the streak in 19. They didn't win on the road. And 07 was
they beat them at Stanford in 08. No, 07.
Mm-hmm.
And then didn't beat them again until 19, like you said. Yeah. And got beat in a shootout in 09, got beat convincingly in 11, got beat somewhat convincingly in 13, blew a lead late in 15. 17, you were up in the fourth quarter and just got dominated in the fourth quarter.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of those games weren't all that competitive. And then, of course, they were beating you at home too, Trev. I mean, just blew Notre Dame out in 2010.
Sure,
37-10 or something like that. So then Stanford starts whooping you on the recruiting trail. It's like Paulson Adebo, like, he committed Notre Dame, and we all knew if Stanford offers him, it's over. Like, think about that. Think about being in that reality right now where Notre Dame gets a commitment from a stud corner, top 100 player, future pro, and you're like, dude, if Stanford offers, they're done. They have no shot at keeping him. Kid from Texas, if Stanford offers. Think about that. But that was the reality back then. So, yeah, they're just never going to get the support they need to win. So, like Andrew says, if the admin cared at all about football, they would be in the Big Ten right now. Most likely.
Yeah.
To a degree, there'd still be some hesitation about, okay, but because it's not about being good at football, it's about the market. But what would the market look like if the football program really cared about continuing what Harbaugh and them built? There's still a shot they don't get in. But I think they'd have been a lot more attractive because that's a much more Big Ten, like the most Big Ten brand of school in the Pac-12 was Stanford. Style of play, academic, research, all of that what the Big Ten universities pride themselves on, their big research institutions, that's what Stanford is, as well as other things. But that would have made a ton of sense other than it just isn't a huge TV market for college football. But I think it'd have been harder to say no to Stanford if they were still what they were under Harbaugh and Shaw. I think there's some truth to that. They certainly fit it. I mean, was Jim Harbaugh not running a Big Ten style of football back then? Very much so. It's part of the reason he won, because they were so different from everybody else in the Pac-12 back then. So, yeah, I don't see it. And that's honestly a big reason why I just don't really care about that series anymore, that rivalry anymore. They'll still play them as part of the ACC deal. Give me Stanford 4 times in a decade, and I'm good.
Yep. Berto 2121. Skip if you don't want to rehash. But the recent ESPN rankings, it seems they begin writing the narrative now, as you guys put it, to get the clicks later in the year. Build them now, for example, LSU, to hammer them later.
I certainly think there's something to that with ESPN, but I don't think that's what they're doing with LSU. And I'd be curious to get your thoughts on that, Trev. I just think they're overhyping LSU. I don't think it's build them up to tear them down. I think it's the SEC is our meal ticket. And so whatever we can do to create interest in the SEC now, and sometimes creating interest in the SEC is not building up a team. Sometimes it's tampering it down because that team might lose the game early to Notre Dame, and you don't want Notre Dame and NBC to get all that love, right? So especially if you're ESPN, you're in a tricky situation because you don't want Notre Dame scheduling a bunch of Big Ten teams, because now you lose almost all of you're going to get the road ACC games is it. If Notre Dame starts scheduling a bunch of those games. So it's going to be interesting to see kind of how that plays out, Trev. But I think some of it is just I think, Berto, I think what you're doing is you're also giving them a little bit too much credit. Like they're trying to play 4D chess. I think with some of this stuff that's true. I don't think ESPN did that ranking. I think Mark Schlabach I think it was just lazy. I think Trev nailed it yesterday. It's just narrative driven. It's just a bunch of narratives that you're holding on to without it. And it keeps you from having to do real research into these teams. I think is what it boils down to.
Yeah, typically when you see outlets like that try to build something up to tear it down later, it's with an extreme. Nobody knew how Colorado was going to be, but Dion goes back there and he's a big name, and it's easy to do that. They did it a little bit with Stanford. Stanford alum, NFL former quarterback Andrew Luck goes back to his alma mater to be the GM, and Stanford's going to be terrible this year. But I don't see them doing it with LSU like in that light, because Penn State's floor is relatively high for this season. They're not building them up to be like, we put LSU at number 6 in our preseason rankings because there's a chance they finish the year 6-6.
Right, and we're going to crush James Franklin if they don't. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the floors.
They
of
did
these
that with
teams.
Dion. That's the most obvious. They did that with Dion because they knew that was a story either way. I don't think that tearing LSU down is going to get them a lot of favors.
No.
What's the evidence we have that they're going to say anything negative about an SEC team? Period. Mm-hmm. They'll just stop talking about them.
Yep.
That's it.
So I think they're saying these things because they genuinely believe them because of the light amount of research that's been done.
Yeah.
Which is a little bit more disheartening than if they were trying to just build something up to tear it down, to be completely honest with you. But it's a different story for a different day.
Yeah. Another one from Berto going in a completely different direction. And then we've got some super chats I see that we have to get down to.
Good deal. Berto 2121. Thoughts on honey? All the time, sometimes, only in tea or coffee?
Sometimes, but usually only in tea. I've never put honey in coffee. I don't drink coffee. But I love honey in tea. I can't drink tea without honey. But there's some times that I'll put honey on other things. Occasionally, I'll go old school back to when I was a kid and have a peanut butter and honey sandwich. You remember? Did you ever have those as a kid, Trev?
I had one of those yesterday.
Nice. Nice. So you know one of us has a spouse out of town right now.
Listen, buddy, my wife's out of town. I'm eating bologna sandwiches and peanut butter and jelly. So like
cereal for breakfast, bologna or PBJs for lunch. Yes.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, I love it. I'm trying to think what else I even put honey on food wise besides that. But I love it in tea. But chicken nuggets and honey is a really good, like real chicken nuggets. A lot of McDonald's chicken nuggets need barbecue sauce, but like real chicken nuggets, like where it's actual chicken. So like we used to be members at Knollwood, the country club. We're not anymore, but we were, and they had really good chicken tenders there, and I'd get honey every time and have them with honey. It's phenomenal. That's what I like to have honey in, is chicken, like a real chicken nugget, like the kind you have at home, not the kind you get at McDonald's.
Hot honey is phenomenal. I put it on pizza. I put it on, it's so good, man. Like there's this pizza place here in Indy. It's called Futuro's. It's Detroit style pizza, which I didn't love before I had this place. It's pretty good, man. I mean, they put like dollops of like warm ricotta cheese on it. I get like a chicken bacon pizza. They drizzle hot honey on top. It's a game changer. It's so good.
Interesting.
And I was really interested to see. I was like, okay, there's like tomato sauce on this pizza, but none of the flavors overpower each other. So I put hot honey on pizza now. Not all pizza. Like if I go get Papa John's pepperoni pizza, I don't put honey on it. But
Robert McCall puts hot honey on bullet wounds. I don't know if you knew that. Did you ever see Equalizer? Oh, really? With Denzel? Okay, you have to watch it. It's really good. It's really good. There's 3 of them now. I think they were all 3 pretty good.
Okay.
Not the Queen Latifah TV version. I'm talking about like the real, like, Denzel Washington. Yeah, it's pretty good. Actually, I just was watching that last night just on as background noise for like the 50th time. It's really good. The first one. We'll get some super chats, Cherub, and I'm sorry that we did not get to these sooner, guys.
Super chat from Beefeater ND08. Thank you for the super chat. Happy Friday. If Notre Dame signs, I think that's supposed to be wins. Oh, no, I'm sorry. If Notre Dame signs 6 or 7 of these blockbuster Clemson series, wouldn't it almost be like they have created their own super conference as a counterbalance to the pending Big Ten SEC college football cartel?
That would only be true if they signed it with teams not in those 2 leagues. So, like if Notre Dame did something like, here's something I'd be interested in, Trev. Let's say that Notre Dame does something like this. Like Notre Dame and the ACC get together and they're like, listen, here's what we're going to do. We're going to sign about 3 or 4 deals with your teams in your league, but we're not going to count them towards the 5 other than years where we already have them scheduled. But we'd like to not count them at all, because then you can give us more teams from your league, because now it's about TV revenue. I think it's in the ACC's best interest to try and play Notre Dame more. So, hey, look, Notre Dame, you want to go schedule some of these teams? Cool. We support that. So go sign Pitt to a long-term deal. Go sign Florida State to a long-term deal, with the caveat that they have to stay in the ACC. Something along those. I'd be all for that. If you wanted to find a Big 12 team to try to help prop up, okay, fine. I don't know that brings a whole lot to Notre Dame, but you'd have to do some of these deals with teams that aren't necessarily in the SEC or Big 10, because or not so much the Big 10, but especially the SEC. But I still don't know that would really move the needle a whole lot. The only one that would really move the needle with is the ACC, because that's the one that the ACC or the Big 10 and the SEC are trying to poach. And everybody talks about Florida State and Clemson, but the schools that they're really trying to poach are not Florida State and Clemson. It's North Carolina, it's Virginia. It's schools like that are more academically oriented for the Big 10, but also Big 10 wants to get into that Mid-Atlantic region. They want to get into the East Coast region. That's the same reason they went and got Rutgers. And then North Carolina and Virginia fit what they believe their academic model is as well, more so than I don't know that the Big 10 has a whole lot of interest in Florida State. I don't. I think if Florida State had interest right now from big time leagues, they would have fought harder to even than they did to get out of that deal.
I do think you're onto something here, though, Beefeater. I don't know if Notre Dame creates its own super conference, but I think what this deal kind of does is it is somewhat of a counterpunch to the Big Ten SEC college football cartel type of deal. I mean, the ACC is by far the overlooked, like the third of the big 3 between the Big Ten, the SEC, and the ACC, and them tying their flagship team, Clemson, to Notre Dame, who is kind of that is the one kryptonite of the Big Ten and the SEC. Notre Dame has beaten both conferences now in the postseason in big moments. And so I think you could be onto something with that. I think that is a good move by Clemson. I think it's good for the ACC to sit back and say, it's like, hey, yeah, you guys might have this automatic big thing, but Notre Dame's kind of tied to us. And there's a written agreement that they're just going to make it in as long as they rank in X position going into the final week of the rankings. And now they're playing our most well-renowned team year in and year out, the most successful team for the better part of a decade, year in and year out. I think that's a good move.
Mm-hmm. Somebody just reminded me of something else. Honey on a warm biscuit.
Oh, yeah.
Really good.
Super chat from Tyler Evans. Thank you, Tyler. Give me your top 5 head coaches this year under the most pressure. It can be any kind of pressure, like hot seat or championship or expectations.
Well, if you're going to say pressure can be positive or negative pressure, I think the 2 that jump on for me that are under pressure, like win pressure, is Marcus Freeman and James Franklin. Especially now that Ryan Day has a title. It's kind of like, okay, guys, Michigan got one, Ohio State got one. Where are you 2? And you look at the teams that they have. So I think as far as like win a championship and have a big year, I think there's pressure on both of those guys to show that last year wasn't a fluke for either one of them. So I'd put them in there. Hot seat pressure. I mean, we've kind of talked about the hot seat pressure before, Trev. I mean, there's several guys out there like that. Before we move on to the hot seat pressure, anybody you want to kind of point to, like you think that there's like win big pressure right now? Like I said, Ryan Day got a big monkey off of his back last year. I don't know that there's pressure. I don't know that Dan Lanning is there yet where the media has pressure on him. You and I do, but I don't think, like Steve Sarkisian, I don't think the national media, I don't think the pressure's there, because as long as they're finishing in the top 4, they're going to get overhyped every year. I think Notre Dame and Penn State have to prove more to stay on that level than what does Texas or Oregon. So that's why I put those two guys ahead. But anybody else that you can think of that's on sort of that pressure that you better, it's hey, you're in that verge. You got to win. You got to show that you can be that top school. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, Kirby Smart. I think the loss to Notre Dame last offseason, or this last postseason, kind of put it into where it's like, okay, this year in 2024, people were willing to chalk it up to a down year. But in that down year, Georgia Tech took you to multiple overtimes. Florida had your number in the first half of that game before DJ Lagway goes out. I mean, in the SEC championship, it was a miraculous comeback and with a backup quarterback. But let's not forget, for the first 2 quarters of that game, Texas also was kind of battling back. It's a rematch, and it's very rare for the same team to beat you twice in a rematch. I'm well aware of that fact. But then with the loss in the postseason to Notre Dame, a team that you kind of had their number in all previous matchups leading up to that point, I would make the argument that if Kirby Smart doesn't make it back to the college football playoff semifinals this upcoming season, he could start getting talked about in the same light as Dabo Swinney. It's like, yeah, your run was good, but was it kind of, because when Georgia won back-to-back in 21-22, of course, it was coined, is he the new Saban? Is the SEC still the dominant power? Well, now the SEC's flagship in Georgia, now that Alabama and LSU haven't been making the playoffs, it's like, okay, well, now what? It's like, what's next for Kirby Smart? Can he remain in that limelight? So I don't think he's under as much pressure as James Franklin and Marcus Freeman to prove that it's not a fluky season, but almost kind of the opposite. It's like, okay, was this truly a down year, or is this where your program's at now? Still competing for SEC titles. Clemson's still competing for ACC titles. You'll make the playoffs, but you're not really a threat to win it all. Where do you fall in that? And so I would make the argument for Kirby Smart. That one's interesting.
There's a coach that I think is a little bit on the hot seat that I don't think should be, but it's just the nature of, if you don't want to be on the hot seat after 1 year, don't go to Bama. Kalen DeBoer's got to make a big jump this year. They've got to win minimum 10 games in the regular season, minimum. And I think even 10-2 is kind of like, okay, we'll give you one more year to turn this thing around. But I think he's one. I think Brian Kelly's seat is heating up a little bit, just kind of going, by conference. I think his is starting to heat up a little bit. Billy Napier, we've talked a lot about. I think those are the big ones in that league. And then Brent Venables is another guy who I think his seat is a lot hotter than we're hearing about being discussed. I think Mike Norvell's seat is really hot right now. You can't go to, I don't care what you did the year before, bro. You cannot go 2-10.
Yeah.
You cannot go 2-10 in a place like that and have a job. You just can't. So they got to bounce back. What would you say the minimum number of wins this year for him to just be off the hot seat? 9 regular season?
Mike Norvell?
Mm-hmm.
I'd say 8-4.
8-4 minimum?
Yeah, minimum 8-4.
Yeah, I that'll be interesting. And he better hope that they never have a season where their offense is lighting it up and their defense stinks, because if that happens, well, why don't we just make Gus the head coach?
Yeah.
Watch.
Yep.
Justin Wilcox's seat is getting hot. Tony Elliott at Virginia, his seat's getting hot. I think Dave Doran's seat is getting a little bit hot. I think Mike Loxley's seat is getting a little bit hot. Sonny Dykes has got a little bit of a hot seat. Here's a couple that I think are that I like. This is a year where if you don't turn it around now, you may not be done right now, but you're going to be done soon. Number 1, Lincoln Riley. He's got to. You've got to show another 7-5, 6-6 year, and he's going to be in trouble.
Yeah.
Big trouble. Matt Rule, another 7-5, 6-6 year, and you're going to be like, dude, you're what, year 4 now? This is year 4 for him, or year 3 for him?
He's going into year 3.
Going into year 3. you're in year 3. You've signed all these good recruits, and you're 7-5, 6-6 again. Like, nah, buddy, that's not good enough. You've gone 5-7 and 7-6. By year 3, you've got to make that 8-9 win jump. So I think he's another one. And then I've talked about like Dave Dorn, but here's a big one for me. And I don't know if he's on the hot seat per se, but I think his seat gets scalding hot if they don't have another 9-10 win season. Mario Cristobal. Those donors are spending a lot of money on that roster. And eventually they're going to want some sort of return for all that money they're spending. And 8-9 wins every year is not going to get it. The 10-win season last year gave him a little bit of a buffer. But if they fall back like some people, and I know you are one of those, if they fall back like some people who I respect think they might, he could have all of a sudden have a really hot seat because they're not going to put up with that. That's the life that we're in now, right?
Yeah.
Like you're not going to get the same kind of grace period now. Could you imagine if like Marcus Freeman had like a Brian Kelly 2016 type drop off this year? Dude, we gave you all that money to keep this. Your hot seat. You're done. That's not going to happen. I'm making the point, like things that you'd get away with in the past, you're not getting away with now because of how much money they're investing in these teams. Like, fine, we won't spend $20 million on the roster next year, but we're going to spend $20 million on buying you out of your contract. So yeah, he's one that to me that you better have a strong season, or it's going to be year 4 for him.
Luke Fickell is on there for me. Not being bowl eligible at Wisconsin is not good. Like at a brand of Big Ten football that's kind of been that relevant in the Midwest, especially now that like Midwest football is kind of coming back to light. Mm-hmm. You know, the power balance is starting to shift a little bit. It's not just all down in the South. The last 2 national championship winners have come from the Midwest, and Wisconsin's not bowl eligible. You know, like it wasn't that long ago where Wisconsin was a 10-win team, like at least with Nebraska. And let me say before I say this, I am on board with you. I think Matt Rule is also on the hot seat too, but Wisconsin has been a better collegiate program the last decade than what Nebraska has been. And the fact that Nebraska was bowl eligible this past season, Wisconsin isn't, Luke Fickell's got to get some stuff turned around.
And they've just been ugly in how they perform.
Yes.
And just had some really ugly losses. Just like, dude, like, what are you doing?
And then the other one for me, I know that he's been around college football for a while, and the standard at Oklahoma State is not to go compete for a national championship. Mike Gundy can't have another 3-9, 4-8 type of season. Like it's, nobody's projecting them, or the expectation for Gundy isn't, hey, dude, we need you 10-2 fighting for a spot in the college football playoff, but you can't be 3-9.
I also think, I'm sorry for cutting you off, man.
No, you're good. You're good. Last thing I was going to say was just you can't be 3-9 a year removed from playing for your conference title. That's how I look at Mike Gundy, man.
Especially when I think you're at a school where I think the donors want you gone anyway. I don't think the donors like how much power Mike Gundy has at the school, and that's what they've been waging a war on, and that's why they've done some of the things. I mean, he almost got fired last year. I mean, think about what that guy's done. If anybody in the country should have a you're never going anywhere deal, it's Mike Gundy at Oklahoma State. Like, you will never be better under another coach than you've been under Mike Gundy, ever. You just beat Notre Dame in the Fiesta Bowl a few years ago. So, you did something that James Franklin couldn't do and Kirby Smart couldn't do if you're talking about selling it, and that's beat Marcus Freeman. Now, I don't really count that because that wasn't Marcus Freeman's team, but you get the point that I'm making. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it's not a good look. I wouldn't touch that job with a 10-foot pole. If what Mike Gundy's doing isn't good enough for your school, then I want no part of this. Mm-hmm. I think they've wanted him gone for a while.
Agreed. Super chat from Beezer 12. Washing beard. Does a Chicago Pope mean an Irish natty this year?
Well, if Notre Dame wins the national title this year, it won't because of the Pope. So no, I think that's funny. It's I get it. And I've seen like a picture of him with the Notre Dame stuff on. I don't know if that's real or not, but no. I hope the Pope doesn't spend a second praying for a Notre Dame championship. There's a lot more important things a Pope needs to be worried about than whether or not Notre Dame wins football games.
Super chat from Steve Rolfe. Thank you, Steve. Before Brian Kelly recruited the 2020 class, They made this push to recruit high school running backs as corners. What do you think of that idea then and now?
I don't know that I would say that was their strategy as much as they just felt that's what they could do. We didn't see that a ton. I mean, obviously Kavari Russell was that way, but Cole Luke wasn't a high school running back. I'm trying to think through some of the different corners they signed over the years. Julian Love was, Troy Pride was not, Dante Vaughn was not. So, and some two-way players. Cam Hart was a two-way player that eventually moved over there. But I look for guys that can play corner at a high level. I don't care if they are natural corners or converted corners or whatever the case may be. You just look for a skill set. I think, however, Steve, if you're recruiting, running back is a position where you're going to keep your eye open for guys that maybe are hidden gems where this guy could play defense. And Lou Holtz used to do that all the time. A lot of those guys also played corner in high school, but they were considered running back recruits, and then they'd move over. But certainly there's guys, I mean, like Kavari Russell played running back in high school, but Kavari also played corner. I mean, it wasn't like Julian Love was a really good high school running back, but he also played, corner and safety. It wasn't like they never played defense and they just moved them over. The first time Bennett Jackson ever played defense in his life wasn't at Notre Dame after they moved him over from receiver. So, but I do think that there's a natural, the two-way players that have that maybe people view more as running backs. Like Notre Dame's not going to convert Javian Osborne to corner, right? I mean, they're not going to convert Aeneas Williams or Keedron Young to corner. The only guy on their roster that you could maybe consider converting to DB is Jeremiah Love, who's a pretty good high school defensive back. But overall, look, I love two-way players, Steve. And so I'm always a fan of that idea. I love two-way players. Sometimes guys are great like Dallas Golden in high school was a better offensive player than he was a defensive player. But so he's an example of that, where I think he projects best to defense, but he was a much more impactful high school running back than he was a high school defensive back. And I think he's going to be a stud corner at Notre Dame. So I support the strategy as one of several options. It shouldn't just be your only strategy, though. Then we had a super sticker from Raymond Harton. Raymond, thank you very, very, very much, my dude. So we have 2 of those from K Grant, my dude. I think K Grant just ordered a bunch of stuff off the merch store. I saw it in an email today pop up. I haven't had a chance to look at it yet, but hope you like it. This is a new shirt. I tried a different I think I'm going to make a change in the store because I tried a different style, like a shirt, like a different brand, and this fits much. It's a little longer, fits much better. I may switch it out. We shall see. Because like you have a navy blue one, right, Trev?
Yeah.
Do you think it's a little short on the bottom?
Yeah, I do. It's a little boxy.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm looking for one that's a little bit of a longer fit. So this one. So what I'll do is I'll buy something for myself first, see how it is, if it's quality or not, and then if I like it and I feel it's quality, then I'll put it in the store.
Nice.
But there just haven't been a lot of good Navy options. And so I'm going to, have to go look at that. So
Mark Avalone, like or dislike, enjoying a rainy, muddy football practice back in high school?
Dislike thoroughly. I was a quarterback. Trevor and I were quarterbacks. I don't know. Maybe you liked. I hated.
I hated it so much.
Yep. I'm like, let's just practice indoors.
Oh my goodness, it was terrible. Like I was never the biggest fan of doing inside run, but rainy, muddy days, it's like, yep, all for it. I need it to be 68 and breezy if I'm doing 7-on-7, man.
That's right.
Mark Avalone, transfer portal. Winter will be higher volume for those dissatisfied with present situation or looking for better NIL, while spring will be for those who lost the competition. Agree or disagree?
I do disagree. I think there's a nice balance in both. I think there's guys that, I mean, if anything, you jump in the portal now. I say this, Mark, if you're talking about Notre Dame, then I would say you're correct. But even with Notre Dame, I mean, what did most of the Notre Dame players that jumped in the portal in the winter do that for? They were going to lose jobs. They hadn't lost them yet, but they were going to. They weren't going to play a whole lot. They were bearing the depth chart. I think I look at it, Trev. I think to some degree this is true, but I also think that you're seeing more kids jump in the portal now that are multiple. The spring is when you see a lot of multiple transfer guys jump in because they're just, I think a lot of them are just looking for paydays. Some of the kids, I'm like, why did you jump into the portal? Like, you were in a good situation. Well, I'm getting paid more now. I think that's just part of it. Trevor Pena didn't jump in the portal because he lost a competition. Jumped in the portal because he wanted to go get paid. I mean, his coach flat out came out and said it. I mean, you caught 80 some passes last year. There's no reason for you to jump in the portal. That's true for, a lot of guys. What the Watson kid from Syracuse jump in the portal for? He didn't lose a job. So there's a blend of this in both windows, in my opinion. And if anything, you have a shot at getting more money in the spring because A, some schools are more desperate, and B, there's less people in the portal in the spring than in the winter. So there's usually less jobs open too. But like if I'm a quarterback and there's some desperate teams right now, like if a stud quarterback jumped in the portal right now, I think he'd probably get more money now than in the winter when 7 of them jump in the portal. Because desperation can drive the price up, Trev. Like, hey, I might not be the greatest guy, but I'm the only one out there, and you have a need for that, and I'm certainly way better than what you have now. It can drive the price up. You also tend to get more competitors in there also. So I think it's a little bit of a blender. So I disagree overall, Mark, but I would be willing to say that there's maybe a little bit more of a blend of that, like where the percentage is greater of those two things in the periods that you mentioned. So that's a good question.
Yeah, what some of the numbers tell us, I just went through and looked. All of Notre Dame's opponents had more volume in the winter. So that part I do agree with. Every single school that Notre Dame has on their schedule had more players hop in the winter. But I am with Brian when he says in the spring portal, it's not just for those who lost to competition. I mean, the same can't even be said in the winter. Zachariah Branch hopped in the winter. He did not lose a starting position. He didn't. I mean,
same with Deuce Robinson. Same with the kid that went to Penn State,
Kyron Hudson.
Yep. I always forget his name. I keep wanting to say Mekhi Lemon, but I know. And then I'm like, no, it was Jacoby Lane. I'm like, no, not him either. Kyron Hudson. So, like, for some reason, I have trouble separating those three names. Jacoby Lane and Mekhi Lemon both stayed.
Mm-hmm.
But Deuce Robinson didn't leave because he wasn't getting used or wasn't going to play. Left because he wanted to get paid.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, in the volume numbers, I agree, but the reasoning in the spring is where I disagree, partially. Berto 2121, who's the next Clemson type of team that could become a rival?
So we're talking about a team that Notre Dame is just playing more recently that could create opportunities to where it grows even more. I mean, I think the only one that could potentially become that right now would be Ohio State.
Yeah.
But I don't know that either school would have much of a desire or need. Like, I don't know what Ohio State would get out of signing a 12-year deal with Notre Dame, and I don't know what Notre Dame would get out of signing a 12-year deal with Ohio State. I don't, other than great games.
Yeah.
But like, as far as like, does your program benefit? If you're Ohio State, like, I don't want to give Notre Dame that many chances to then maybe start beating us, and then now we fall behind them. I don't want to give them that opportunity. If I'm Notre Dame, I think playing Ohio State would mean more for Notre Dame than it would for Ohio State. How about that?
Oh, yeah.
Because Ohio State's already it's always a disadvantage for the team that's the better program. And as much as I dislike it, you can't sit here and argue that Notre Dame's as good of a program as Ohio State, and not just because you're 0-3 against them in the last 3 years, but also because they've won a title and you haven't. They've been in the playoffs twice in the last 3 years. You've been there once. There's no metric you can use from a football standpoint to argue that Notre Dame's as good as Ohio State. So people are going to consider you better than Notre Dame if you keep beating them. Well, yeah, they already think that. There's a better chance that Notre Dame starts winning some of these games, and now that helps them start taking some recruits from you. And now they start winning even more, which is what happened with Notre Dame and Stanford. I mean, that's part of what hurt Notre Dame with Stanford is Stanford started beating Notre Dame on the field, and then that made it easier for them to be able to convince kids to come play for them in football instead of going to Notre Dame.
I also think Notre Dame and Ohio State have the perfect postseason rivalry. As much as I love rivalries, I don't want Notre Dame to have games 1 through 12 just be everybody that they have a rivalry with, whether it's good or bad beef. You still need to fill up your schedule with the, I was going to say Stanford, but I guess technically they had a rivalry at one point in time. But you know what I mean? I don't want every week Notre Dame goes, they play Ohio State, then they play Miami, then they play Michigan, then they play Florida State, then they play. It's like, need a break.
Right.
Notre Dame has the perfect postseason rivalry with Ohio State, as far as I'm concerned, to be set up. It's like Alabama Clemson back in the day. It's like, at some point, two of these Southern powers are going to meet somewhere in the postseason. Yep. And how I like the Ohio State Notre Dame thing. It doesn't have to be regular season, and it also hasn't bode well for Notre Dame in the regular season based on what recent history has told us. To Brian's point of it would mean more for Notre Dame than it would for Ohio State.
Yeah.
So I'm perfectly happy with it being just in the postseason.
Yeah. And I love your point, Trev, especially in the 12-team playoff. There's a greater opportunity every year that they both get in now than what was before. So yes. That's when you play them. And because there's just no history with those two teams either. Like I have no interest in that. But is there anybody else that you could think of? I mean, because again, if we're looking at the Clemson rivalry, I look at it for meaning a team that they've started to kind of play somewhat recently, and I just don't know who that would be. Like Florida State's one that you could maybe look at, but I don't really care. I mean, you had some pretty decent games against Florida State last 10 plus years. You had the great game in 14 and then Notre Dame's kind of beat them pretty good every game since then. But that 2021 game down in Tallahassee was a great game.
Yeah, it was.
I mean, Notre Dame jumps to a big lead. Florida State comes back, goes to overtime. So they've played North Carolina a few times lately. Whatever. It's like Louisville's one that you could maybe look at.
Maybe.
But I don't. Again, that's kind of like the opposite of why you don't get anything out of beating Louisville, but they beat you, and it's all of a sudden it's like you're giving them that Super Bowl win. Plus, I wouldn't want my defensive coordinator to have to play Jeff Brom every year.
No,
it's like, I'm pass. But that's one where I look at Trev and I'm like, I don't know that would be one I'd care a whole lot about, but they've also played a couple good games. I mean, they were playing a close game in 20. I wouldn't call it a good game. It was an ugly game, but it was a close game in 2020. The 2020 was it 2019. They had a decent game or, kickoff. It was close for a while and then Notre Dame ran away with it late, but this past year's game was great. Louisville beat you the year before. So, I mean, you've played some good games. I just don't know that I really care about playing Louisville a whole bunch.
But the rivalry that they just set up with Clemson is just such a unique situation because Clemson is a national known brand. They've won national championships recently, and Notre Dame and Clemson have had good games recently. Like that's a very niche group to be in. So yeah, I have no idea, to be honest. There's teams in contention, but none that would bring the lore of Notre Dame Clemson.
Yeah. I think Florida State's probably the only one that I could think of. And I don't have an interest in that. They're just kind of like that whiny, bratty kid that you just don't want to – you just want to kind of – like what was that was from the – have you watched the Pony XS yet, Trev? Have you gone back and watched that yet? Because you told me you hadn't watched it yet, right? 30 for 30 on SMU?
No, I have not seen that.
Dude, I'm telling you, you'll love it. You got to watch it. It's a great time to do it. Your wife's out of town. It's a great time to sit down and watch it. I'm just telling you, and Buck can check it out together, hang out, and you'll love it. But there's this, he's like, he was talking about SMU, and he was like, they're like that mouthy little kid that you just want to, it's kind of got to pop in the nose. And it's just like, that's Florida State to me. It's like, you guys are never happy. You're always whining about something. You think you're better than you are. and you just kind of want to pop them in the mouth from time to time. But I don't really care to play that team every year, and it's not at all because I'm afraid of them. And it's like, well, yeah, but you get to play. They're in the Panhandle. They're not. It's not like you're playing Florida, who's in Central Florida or Miami. We're playing in the Panhandle. There's not a lot of recruits over there, So I mean, Georgia's closer to some of the best recruits in Florida than Tallahassee is. I mean, it just is. So I don't really care about that one, to be honest with you.
Maybe like a Texas A&M. Maybe they're an SEC team.
Yeah.
Maybe they have previous history.
Well, I talked about that the other day. That would be one that I'd be okay scheduled, but I don't know that I'd want to play them every single year. But I'd entertain the idea.
Yeah, like that'd be the only other one that kind of has the national lore. Kyle Field has 100 and some odd thousand in attendance. They've had great players come through there before.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah, I also think, Trev, when you have a five-team SEC deal, you've got Navy. Hopefully, you can keep USC. I don't know that there's a whole lot of other games you want to just lock into your schedule, because then you don't have the flexibility to play a lot of teams outside of that ACC schedule either.
That's a good point. That kind of takes away from the whole selling point of being Notre Dame. At that point, you're kind of just making your own schedule.
Right.
Yeah. Well, locked into. Yeah.
Yeah. Good questions. It's a good one, Trev. I'm going to ask this one from Matthew Kettner. Now, we'll have like little segments like this during the offseason, but it's good to kind of give it a little teaser now. Matthew Kettner asked, top 3 2025 underclassmen top performers, offense and defense. So freshmen, let's say underclassmen for this conversation are freshmen or sophomore in school. So it could be redshirt freshman or true sophomore or true freshman or redshirt sophomore. I should have just said this. Anyone with freshman or sophomore eligibility. That would have been a much easier way to say it. But yes, you can include anyone with freshman or sophomore eligibility. Who are your top 3 performers on offense that fit that mold, and who are your top 3 performers on defense that you're expecting here in 2025 for Notre Dame?
Okay, that answered my question. So it's who we're expecting to, not who Notre Dame needs to.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're predicting, who do you think are going to be the top the top performers among the underclassmen on offense and defense in 2025?
On offense, I'm going to go Kedron Young. I'm going to go Kedron Young. I'm going to go Micah Gilbert. And I'm going to go, to add a true freshman there, I'm going to put in James Flanagan. Because outside at the top with Eli Raridan, I think the rest of that tight end depth chart is kind of, you could see a little bit of movement with that between the summer and fall camp. And James Flanagan is very college ready to play. He's not going to need a year to cook. So I'd go Kedron Young, Micah Gilbert, and James Flanagan on offense. On defense, I'm going to go Jadon Blair. I'm going to go Dallas Golden. And then I'm going to go – I'm not going to put in Leonard Moore. That's kind of an obvious one. So I'll go with my guy, Carson Hobbs. I don't think he's going to take any starting positions barring any injury, but there were moments last year where Notre Dame needed depth at corner. I mean, Christian Gray ran back a 98-yard pick six. It was on the field the next play on defense. And so I think Carson Hobbs is going to play some really meaningful minutes for the Irish. So I would go, but then I'd be leaving off Bryce Young. All right, you know what? I'm going to go Jadon Blair, Bryce Young, Carson Hobbs on defense. Yeah. So those are mine.
And on offense, you went with, I know you said
Kedron Young, Micah Gilbert, and James Flanagan.
I'm going to go CJ Carr, Charles Jagasaw. It's a freshman or sophomore eligibility. And I'm going to go Anthony Knapp. I like your Keedron Young pick, though, so I'm kind of like, okay, let's see how that one goes. But I'm going to go those three. Defense, I'm good with leaving Leonard Moore off because you're like, that's cheating. But other than Leonard Moore, who's going to be a stud? My three would be Bryce Young. I'm going to go Kingston, Viliama Asa, and I'm going to go Boubacar Traore. Those are my three on defense.
I like that. When I went with underclassmen, I immediately went to people that we haven't seen play that much yet.
Yeah. He just said top performers, not like
so
risers and stuff like that. It's top performers. I'm going to go with those. It's a good one.
I went with the risers.
It's a good one.
Frank G, when taking a look at college football as a whole at the Power 4 level, what position do you think is the most difficult to recruit? What position is the easiest to recruit?
I still think quarterback's the most difficult to recruit. Quarterback and offensive line are probably the two most difficult to recruit because those two, to me, there's so much more about the psyche and mindset that makes it challenging. Easiest to recruit, I'd probably say nowadays, running back and wide receiver.
Are you talking about like recruit, like evaluate, or recruit, like bring to your school? Because I think the answer for me varies depending on what school you're at. Ohio State does not have similar struggles.
I looked at it as bringing to your school the type of players are going to make an impact, meaning the evaluation part as far as like, okay, finding a good player, getting to your school. And so like when I look at it as I think quarterback is very difficult to recruit because you may see elite physical tools, but there's all those other things that go with it. And I think offensive line kind of has that struggle too. And then also a lot of coaches, even coaches, not just recruiting analysts, but coaches make mistakes. But they fall in love a little bit too much with the film of high school offensive linemen who are just massive.
Yeah.
And they'll overlook, he's got terrible feet. He's a little bit soft mentally. He's just so much bigger and better. And they'll overlook that Joe Walt type of kid that's 250, that's got that great frame and the athleticism to eventually be a stud. That's why you see so many times people say, look at this 2-star that got drafted. More often than not, that guy's probably an offensive lineman. And a lot of these, how many 3-stars got drafted in the first round? I'll bet you, it'd be one to bet you, and I don't know this for a fact because I haven't done the study, that a higher percentage of the 2, 3, and no-star guys that get drafted in the NFL are offensive linemen. And I'd be willing to bet that a lot of the busts are that way too. And I think that's also true at running back because I think it's a position where they fall. I think for us as recruiting analysts, I think a lot of them make mistakes at running back because they fall in love with the physical tools and they don't realize there's a lot more of the mental part that goes into it. The reason I do still think running back and receiver is the easiest. Receiver's easy. Volume. Because nowadays, so many high school teams are playing 3-4 receiver offenses. They're 7-on-7s. Everybody wants to be a receiver now. There's more there than there is anywhere else. And a lot of high school offensive linemen are great high school offensive linemen, but they're 6'1", 250 pounds. They're coming to play Division III, not going D1. Whereas if you're 5'8" and $165 and running 4.3, you're going D1, as we see on Notre Dame's board right now with Braden Robinson. So there's just so many of them that you can find him a lot easier to come play. Now, the best of the best, that's a different story. That's hard for anything. Running back's another one where there's just a lot. There's usually just a lot more. Even though it's a rare position where there's usually only like one per team, it's just that it's an easy position, I think, for coaches to evaluate. It's harder for recruiting analysts to evaluate, but for a coach, if you know what you're looking for, it's not a hard position to evaluate. So when I think of easy, hard, it's more so, hey, we can get kids at this position, but we constantly miss on them. Why? It's a hard position to evaluate. I think the other one for me to be that's hard defensively is linebacker. It's a very hard position to evaluate because, again, people fall in love with the physical traits and miss on the fact that this kid can't read a defense to save his life. And in high school, he didn't have to. He's just super athletic. And then there's misses on the other end where like, hey, we don't think that kid's a great player because he's not an elite athlete, but you miss the fact that, but he's going to get there faster than your 4.6 kid does because he just knows he's so smart and instinctive. So I think that's probably the toughest one on defense. The toughest one on defense to land like high level players is probably D tackle because there just aren't a lot of them.
I get what you're saying now. That makes sense. You're talking big picture, overarching. Because originally I was going to say, look, my answer depends on the school that you're at. I mean, Notre Dame has
that's
a much
always true. Geography, right.
What you're known for. I mean, Notre Dame is going to have a much easier time recruiting offensive linemen than like SMU. But then Ohio State is going to have a much easier time recruiting wide receivers than what Notre Dame will. And so it's just depends. But from this perspective you're talking about, I completely agree.
Thank you. Glad
You're
it makes
welcome.
sense now.
ND for life. Where do you both stand on jersey number retirement or Ring of Honor? I know that Notre Dame is such a historical institution that many would frown on it.
I am not a big fan of jersey retirement, with the exception of it being some special type of thing. Like if I'm Ole Miss, I'm retiring Chucky Mullins' number. For those of you who may not remember Chucky Mullins, he's a young man that was paralyzed in a game and then eventually, like over years, died, but he was paralyzed for the rest of his life. Like I want to honor Chucky and the sacrifice he made for our program, and I'm gonna retire his number. If there's a certain case like that, like like if we had a player from back in the 40s that, there's a lot of college football players that died in World War II because they had to go fight. If I was a squad, like maybe honor something like that. I'm more of a fan of honoring the players, not the number. And so like having some sort of ring of honor, some sort of like wall of fame, where something in your stadium where like your goal here's what I think would be awesome at Notre Dame. I think this would be so amazing is you've got the walkway into the stadium and you take guys that earn that honor, the Alan Pages, the Ross Browners, the Rocket Ismails, the Johnny Lou Jackson. I can go on and on and on. I'm taking bricks and I'm putting their plaques, like their name in gold. Doesn't have to be real gold, like on a plaque, and you have it in a part of and you make it to where you can just keep adding it. But like your players walk by and they see that they're those names, those legends, they got to walk by on the way to the stadium. Like, there could be 9 number 3s on there. It doesn't matter. The number doesn't matter. We don't need to retire the number, but you make sure that you like the Ring of Honor thing. Like I'd be fine if let's say Bo Nix wanted to wear number 7. Okay, fine. Wear number 7 for the Broncos. Right. And if you have a Hall of Fame career and all that, then you're up in the Ring of Honor with John Elway and there's 2 number 7s. That's fine. I'm not a big retire the number kind of guy, especially in college. I'm a little bit more, okay with it in professional sports, Trev, because it's just a different animal and you have players playing sometimes 10 plus years at a place. John Elway played at Denver for 15 years. So number 7 wasn't being used for 15. And in college over the course of 15 years, you might have 5-6 different guys wearing number 7, even before we got into the 2 guys wearing the same number at the same time. So I don't really care as much about that. You're just going to have way fewer numbers. I'm more of a Ring of Honor type of guy than a number type of guy. For sure. And I think the bar should be high. Very high for that.
Yeah, Ring of Honor I'm already cool with. I know Notre Dame's a historical institution, but they already have that in Purcell Pavilion. I mean,
sure.
They have the Ring of Honor up in the rafters.
For basketball, right?
Yeah. But look, in addition to what Brian said, like honoring people who, had a horrible accident on the field with your team or, members of like the military, that I get to.
Made something right.
Some sort of sacrifice, a meaningful sacrifice. I get that jersey retirement. But if you are going to retire your jersey, because I'm like relatively impartial, I think it's silly because at some point there is a finite amount of numbers you can wear on a football team. So at some point, whether it's in 20 years or in 120 years, you're going to run out of numbers if everybody's jersey is retired. But you got to do something nuts, like statistically, like where people see that number and it's like, it's just you. And I'm not talking about like fan favorites. I'm not an LSU fan. When I see any LSU player wearing number 9, I think of Joe Burrow because he passed for 60 touchdowns in a year and went undefeated. Like, if somebody's like, I think Joe Burrow's jersey number should be retired at LSU. It's like, I would have no argument against that. Put together one of the greatest single seasons we've ever seen in college football history. But that is what I'm okay with. Like, okay, like jersey retirement, I get that. But like just winning a national championship, like Jake Coker shouldn't have his jersey retired at Alabama, and so it's a very unique circumstance for me. And then also, if you are going to get your jersey retired in any sort of capacity, whether it's in the NFL or in college, don't then unretire it as like this passing of the torch. Like, I think, didn't Warren Moon do that for Cam Ward? Yeah. Like, if
I
your
thought that was
jersey's
pretty cool, by the way.
Like,
very cool, by the way. And Lawrence Taylor said no to, which I'm okay with. Like, my number was retired, but I'm good with it either way. But I thought that moment with Warren Moon was really awesome.
Yeah.
Also says a lot about Warren Moon too, man.
Sure. I like more what LSU has done. Like, if you have an iconic number, that number should like be passed down to like other impact players of that group. Like the number 7 at LSU was huge for DBs, like back in the day. Like Pat Pete wore it, and then Tyrann Mathieu wore it. Like, I think that's cooler than getting your jersey retired in college. Mm-hmm. It's almost kind of like, hey, like this is the aura of this jersey. Like we pass this now on to you. I think that's cooler than getting it retired. But
yeah,
that's just me.
Good stuff. There's another one from Indy for Life that I wanted to get to here. He says, Mr. B. Driscoll, are you from a military family or have military background? I only say that because you are one of the few individuals that always shows us love on your platform. Well, that's kind of disappointing. I wish more people did that, but yes and no. I'm not from a military family in that I didn't serve in the military. My father didn't serve in the military. My mother didn't serve in the military. But my grandfather did. Trev and I have talked about this, right? I believe your grandfather, were we talking about this? Your grandfather also fought in World War II? Vietnam. Okay. But my grandfather fought in World War II. After he passed, actually, I found his service record that showed that he earned 2 different medals during the Battle of the Bulge in the Ardennes. Wow. My uncle was a Marine, but I had a cousin, Tim, who served in Iraq. And but just my whole life, I've kind of had it around me. My grandmother, who recently passed, she was one of 13. I believe all of her brothers served in World War II, or most of them, not all of them. I know at one point in time they served certain. They I think it was the Sullivan family lost, I think, like 4 sons. So they passed a rule that like not all sons in a family like could serve if they were all of duty. So they would take them in non-combat roles, which is essentially what Saving Private Ryan is about. That was a real thing. Like that actually was a rule that was enacted during World War II. But also, I lived in Norfolk, Virginia, so obviously that's a big military town. But honestly, it was just how I was raised. And I had my dad's dad was a police officer, and my Uncle Reed was a captain in Norfolk, Virginia, and police department. But it's just how I was raised. I mean, I don't know if it was because of my grandfather and stuff, but I just was raised to appreciate and respect the military, and I understood what the sacrifices they made were. And as a history major, you study war, especially modern war, and you're just like, you study World War II, you study Vietnam, and like I wrote a paper in college. One of my final theses was I had to write a paper on the Tet Offensive, how that was the battle that basically doomed America in the war, even though it ended up being a decisive military victory initially. Was part of the siege of Khe Sanh, was part of that, but like the Tet Offensive was something that initially they kind of took some losses, but eventually just pushed back and just destroyed the Vietnamese. But that's when you started to see a lot of the stuff coming home and the bodies, and it's when the American public, I felt from study, just kind of turned against and you see how the soldiers were treated when they came back, and you're like, no, you don't understand. First of all, a lot of them didn't choose to fight. They were drafted to fight, but they're doing their duty. Don't get mad at them. Go get mad at the people that sent them over there to do that duty. That's not on them. But you look back and you just think about the sacrifices they made. And these are 18, 19, 21, 22, 23-year-old young people that are going and saying, hey, I'll answer the call. I'll answer the call. I'll fight for freedom. So you don't have to. So you can sit at home and sit on your butt and talk Notre Dame football in the comfort of your own protected home because I'm willing to put this on the line. And it's not just people in our modern era, but just over our history. And so I have so much respect for them. And I have respect for people that do what I'm not willing to do or what I can't do. And I could, but I chose not to because that's just not for me. And boy, you think about the people that said, well, it may not be for me, but I'm going to do it anyway because that's what I believe in. And I don't know how you don't have respect for those people. Does that mean every person that does that is perfect as a human being? No, but it just, I was just raised to have a tremendous appreciation for what the people that have served, that came before us, and what the people that are doing now are doing. And if you have an issue with a war or with something like this, don't take it out on the soldiers that are just doing their duty. Take it out on the people that sent them there. The people that voted, from the cushion of their own Senate seats or House seats or whatever to send them there. That's who you have the problem with. And I think the United States military is a very unique force for good for the most part. It can be used improperly, but it's designed to be a force for good. And for the most part, it's been a force for good. That's just what I believe. And so I completely respect and appreciate the men and women who make that sacrifice. I mean, it's not just the fighting in the war, Trev, but like I know the sacrifices that my cousin had to make to be in the Army from a family standpoint, constantly moving his kids around, being stationed in Germany, Georgia, Kentucky, Texas, being away from your family at times, especially when you have like these family members who both serve. It's tough, man. My cousin Brianna, who's my namesake, she just had to move her whole family to South Korea. Like just 3 kids, just up. Hey, here we go. And that's tough, man. Like that's tough. One of her daughters is in high school. That's not an easy thing to do, but you know what? She did it because she wants to serve. And so I've just always had a great deal of respect for those people. And that's why I am proud to honor them and thank them for what they do. My parents used to always go down to the pier or down to the naval base when the carriers would come back in and welcome the soldiers back. And my parents used to do that all the time. I've never done that before. I would like to do that someday, but I just have a great deal of respect for people that have the courage to do something that I didn't have the courage to do. So, yeah. And thank you for your service as well.
Well said.
Speaking of, this is a good time for this question.
USMA 87, P38 or P51?
Well, yes. I mean, that's at the end of the day, that's my best answer. P38. P38's the coolest looking. It's a twin engine. Like it's a really sweet looking fighter. But I mean, if you're just talking about results, P51 was with this. I mean, that my favorite one and my favorite pilots are the Dauntless dive bombers. I'm talking about courage, having courage to like fly down on a boat as they're shooting anti-air. I mean, but the P51, I mean, it was such a multi-purpose fighter as well. I mean, it was not only just a fighter and you could use it over land, you could use it on carriers, but it was also a great escort. Like it was very important towards escorting the B-29 and the different bombers. Like they had to make sure that they could stay, because you shoot anti-aircraft carriers that are bombers, but you're also trying to send either your Zeros if you're fighting Japan or or whatever. I can't remember what the German fighters were, but trying to shoot down the bombers. Like those are the ones that, hey, it's up to us to make sure we'll sacrifice if we have to. But at the end of the day, our ability to fight is keep these bombers safe is what's going to determine the safety of the mission or not. P-38 was a great fighter as well. But if you just do any kind of study, just the number of kills that and victories that the P-51 pilots had in all theaters, but especially in the Pacific, was unbelievably higher than a lot of others. But then I always thought if I was ever going to be in the military, I would love to have been a fighter, like a fighter pilot. And that's why I think I like Top Gun so much. I could never do it because, just right here. But yeah, that's why I think I always loved the Pacific theater, the Pacific. Like when I studied World War II, I've always loved the Pacific because the fighter pilots and just all the stuff that they do and just how important the air power was and that. It was important everywhere, but you get what I'm saying. But just I've always been infatuated with like carriers, just like, oh man, it's just amazing. But yeah, P-51 was the deal. But yeah, but the Dauntless bombers, man, those pilots were about having some stones. Oh boy. Have you seen the new Midway, by the way, Trev?
Of course I have.
Man,
Love that
dude,
movie.
you would talk about it's just like it, but man, just think about whew, boy.
Yeah, the fighter, the aircrafts in World War II is what got me into World War II. I'm a big World War II buff. So I love and I know they're foreign, but I love the Spitfires that the RAF pilots flew. Love those. P-51s were really cool. Like you said, multi-purposed. I mean, you put tankers on them to fly really long reconnaissance missions. That's crazy. I also love the P-40s. I thought those looked really cool. Those were also used in the Pacific Theater a little bit, more so early in like 41, 42.
When the Hellcats got upgraded, they became a bit kind of as well. When they what was it? I think it was actually, wasn't it when they put the British Rolls-Royce engines in them, if I remember correctly?
I think you're right.
Is when they kind of, because they were not great early, but yeah, if I remember, I could be mistaking them with something else, but I'm pretty sure that's
and then
correct. Yeah,
I think my favorite bombers were probably B-25s, the B-25 Mitchells. It's probably just because of the Doolittle raid, but those were sweet.
Yeah,
those were sweet. And then the B-29 Super Fortress.
What's your favorite modern? My favorite modern one is actually one they're getting rid of.
But my favorite modern one's the F-18.
Okay, I love the Warthogs.
Oh, the A-10s.
I like the ones that support ground troops. The Warthogs are just bad. Those are amazing. They're obviously getting. I think I read that they're being discontinued, but the Warthogs are bad mamma jammas right there, man.
F-18s were the aircrafts they used in Independence Day, and I've always thought those look sweet. That's also the planes they used in Top Gun Maverick.
The new one, yeah.
F-18s are so sweet. Yeah, F-14s were in the first one. Yeah.
Tommy said they're not going anywhere. I thought I saw that the Warthogs are going out. I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong because I love those. Those are, and you hear people say it's also partly part of the thing that intimidates them is because they're loud. Like their guns are super loud. But yeah, those are bad. Those are bad. Yeah, I love those. All right, let's go to here. We didn't get to this one, did we? Yeah.
No, sir. From Coach Koch, if they make a playoff run similar to this past season, who will be good enough to declare for the early draft? Who will be drafted even with a disappointing season?
Well, if they have a disappointing season, I think he means team, right? Is what I'm going with that. If Jeremiah Love is still one of the top backs, but Notre Dame has a disappointing season, he's going to be drafted. I mean, very high. Outside of that, I don't know that there's a long list of Notre Dame players that are going to be draft eligible that are going to get drafted high if they have a disappointing season. They have a disappointing season, it probably means Gabriel Rubio doesn't have a breakout season. Jason Onye doesn't have a breakout season. Just thinking through some of the upperclassmen, Eli Raridan doesn't have a breakout season. It's some guys like that. If Notre Dame makes a deep playoff run again, who could be good enough to be declared early? I mean, one of the linemen, Emil, Jagasol, Schrouth, could potentially be one of those. You could see if Drake Bowen goes out and has just a monster season, maybe because he'd be a 2-year starter under his belt. If Don Schuler goes out and has a monster year, maybe him. If Christian Gray reaches his full potential this season, somebody asked me this the other day, if Christian Gray reaches his full potential, what do you think happens? And I said, well, if Christian Gray reaches his full potential this year, he's an elite cornerback and he's, then he could maybe go. But the crazy thing is, Trev, there's a lot of underclassmen where I'm even if they have big seasons, I don't know that they're going pro yet. Maybe, but maybe a Boubacar, if he has a 12, 13 sack season, is look, I just came off an injury. I've been a little injury prone. I need to strike while the iron's hot. I could see something like that. That's one to think about. And I don't care. If Jalen Seed has a breakout and goes pro, I don't count that really as declaring early. That means you're just bypassing a 5th year. I don't count that as the same as a junior going pro. It's a little bit different for me. So Joe Walt going pro was different than Quentin Nelson they both had 1 year of eligibility left, but Joe Alt never redshirted and Quentin did. He was a senior when he left. He was a redshirt junior. Joe was a true junior. So it's a little bit different. But yeah, that's Jadarian Price is a guy that could, if Notre Dame makes another deep run, I think both running backs play a big role in that. I could see Jadarian going pro, but he's also in that, red shirt junior type of thing. His situation's a little bit different than Jalen Sneed's, though, because he's not a starter and he also had the injury. So he didn't technically have a red shirt season. He had an injury-plagued season. So he's one that I would potentially look at as well. But that's my list.
Christian Gray is the one that I'm keeping an eye on whether Notre Dame has a deep run or not. Because he's going to play a big part in them making a deep run. But if Christian Gray is just who he was last season, I don't think that's going to – if Notre Dame, doesn't make the playoffs or gets bounced in the first round, I don't think people can be like, it's because Christian Gray didn't have the elite season that we thought he was going to have. He's somebody that I'd be keeping my eye on of who could be drafted early, even with a disappointing season. Just if he puts up the numbers that we think that – I mean, people forget he had, 3 interceptions last season? 2? One of them was a 98-yard pick six, and he had the opportunity to have
he should have at least 3 or 4 more, dude.
Yeah.
Just ones that hit him right in the hands. Just
literally.
like, dude.
Literally. And so if any of those turn into interceptions, I could see it. 2 years on a good team, national championship experience, 1 year, multiple interceptions. I could see it. A good corner is highly valued in the NFL.
Yeah. So Tommy Guns and Wayne Miller, both former military members, by the way. So you two are we appreciate your service. But they both told me, Trev, and Wayne said this. He goes, retired Air Force, worked on F-15, F-16, and A-10. He said also said that the Air Force changed their minds and they are staying. So the A-10s are staying, which makes me very happy because I love the A-10s, man. I love the Warthogs. They are awesome. I mean, I remember as a kid watching when they went into Iraq, watching just CNN every day. This is back when CNN was like a real news service. And a lot of the focus early on was it was the air power. And I remember the first time that war was the first time I'd ever seen, really seen an A-10 Warthog, in live, they're showing action. And I'm like, oh, it's a really cool thing. And yeah, man, I love the freaking Warthog. So that makes my day. I'm glad you guys told me that. Very glad you guys told me that. All right. We got another one from, let's see here, from Coach Koch.
For most youth athletes, what are the best complementary sports to play year-round to be the best athlete possible?
Well, I think track is always it just depends on what kind of sport, what you view as your primary sport. If you're in what type of athlete are you? If you're a 6 foot, 3, 6 foot 4, 290-pound offensive lineman, I'd say, winter, you should probably be wrestling if you're looking to play another sport. If you want to go play basketball and get in good shape, that's good too. If you're a non-big guy, I'd say basketball is a great sport to play in the winter. I think there's some states where soccer's played in the spring, and that's always a good one. Other states it's played in the fall, but I think baseball is fine if you're a football player. Baseball is fine, but I think track's probably better. For a lot of the skill players. But baseball's fine too. Baseball's good. So I'd say that one. I always felt like it's not so much playing year round, but I feel like I would rather more young children, and this is the path that I took. So part of it's personal experience and bias because I think it worked for me. But instead of playing Pop Warner football, play soccer as a kid. Because I just think there's a lot of things that go into soccer: conditioning, endurance, less physical contact because you're not teaching headers a lot for third graders, where we're like soccer's a dangerous sport for adults because you can get kicked in the face. I mean, that doesn't happen. I don't know a lot of kids that could do sort of the jump crazy kicks when they were in the third grade. It was more just like magnet ball, you just got to follow the thing around. But I think there's a lot of hand-eye coordination things. There's a lot of conditioning things, being in good shape, being active. I think it's not like you never take blows to the head. You get kicked in the head with a soccer ball, but it's by and large, it's a, for younger kids, soccer becomes a more dangerous sport for concussions when you get older. And the kicks are coming at you. You get kicked in the head with a lot more velocity by an 18-year-old than you do an 8-year-old. You know what I'm saying? So I've always felt like soccer is a really good sport for development, hand-eye coordination, conditioning, and stuff like that as a kid. And then eventually, as you get older, get closer to high school, then start playing football. That's kind of what I would advise people to do. I don't see a lot of value in playing football in elementary school. Unless you're in one of those areas where they play flag football. I think that's actually pretty cool. I think that's smart. I don't believe children that young should be playing football. I just don't. It's personal opinion, but
good deal. Tyler Ottinger, who do you think is the best Jeremiah Love comp? I think it's Darren McFadden.
I mean, I get that because he's tall, but I just thought Darren McFadden, like, I think the size, I think with, I'm trying to pull up, I can't remember what my comp was for Jeremiah Love coming out of high school, but I get the Darren McFadden one. My comp for him coming out of high school was CJ Procise because you could play receiver. I think CJ and Jeremiah are both more fluid athletes than Darren McFadden was. Where Darren McFadden was a one-cut vertical runner. I never thought he was the guy that was going to make – now, he was great at that. I didn't think he was like a great pass catcher. I like the CJ Procise one I did when Jeremiah signed because CJ played defense. Jeremiah could play defense. CJ could go out and play receiver. I think Jeremiah, if you needed him to, Jeremiah could be a full-time receiver. If Jeremiah was like, look, dude, I'm tired of getting hit at running back. I don't want to play running back anymore. All right, well, let's go have you start at Z. You know what I mean? Like that, he can help you at a lot of different places. Darren McFadden was a running back and a running back only, and a very good one in college. But I just think Jeremiah's he's got some Darren McFadden in him, but so did CJ Procise. CJ could hit a crease, plant, and go 90 yards. I just think that the all-around skill set is a little bit more comfortable.
Fair enough. Question in here from Salty. Which 3 coaches, active or retired, would you most trust to propose NIL reforms?
Oh, boy. I mean, look, I said yesterday, I don't want Nick Saban running anything, but I'm totally fine with him being on a committee that's going back and forth on these things. Yes. I think you've got to also get a long-time coach from a school that's not a big-time program. If you're talking about active coaches, a coach that I'd probably consider having on my list would probably be like someone like Kirk Ferentz. I think the problem with this is if you get a lot of older coaches only, you're getting a lot of remember how great it was back in the day, and there's this fight to get us back to where it used to be. I don't want to go back to where it used to be. Used to be was wrong in a different direction. Now we're wrong in another direction. We need to have a little happy medium here with this. I think, and look, I'm saying this as someone who covers Notre Dame, and I'm trying to say, like, I'm not viewing this just as someone who views Notre Dame. I think this makes a lot of sense. I think Marcus Freeman is someone who I would like to see as part of that because you are at an institution where you're a little bit different, and we should be getting more and more schools to aspire to being like Notre Dame and not like Alabama. I don't want a coach dominating who can tell me all he wants about how they didn't cheat, all their kids went to class, all their kids took their own classes. Bullcrap. I know people that were professors at your school. That ain't true. Notre Dame, Lou Holtz is a little bit not – he's too – I think just – I don't want to say this, but he's too old to be part of something like that now. I want Lou to do Holtz Foundation stuff and just continue to be Lou. I think Saban is still young enough to kind of be part of that. I think Marcus Freeman would add a lot of the new age type of discussion because I think Marcus Freeman plays in an era that appreciates that's like, hey, you know what? We should have got paid. I should have got paid when I played at Ohio State, because he was in an era where he played like Marcus Freeman compared to Nick Saban and a lot of other coaches, even Kirby Smart, who's older than Marcus Freeman, his era was kind of the one right before the one Marcus Freeman really played in, where you are now part of that $1 billion industry. You played as part of that $1 billion industry. You played at a national championship team. And you get to the point where it's like, no, we deserved as players a cut of this pie. But I also valued playing at a place that did care about me going to class and getting an education and doing things like that. I'm now at an institution that does care about that. How do you balance doing both of those things? And so Notre Dame is an institution that should be modeled in certain areas to say, hey, they're still encouraging their players to get real degrees and take real classes and do this, and they're really good at football. Because I absolutely think in order to do this right, you got to have people advocating for the academic part of student athlete. The student part of student athlete is being lost in all of this. And if you have some of that, then you'll say, hey, we got to get rid of these rules. Well, they have a right to do this. I understand they have a right to do it. I actually don't agree, because I don't think you have a right to play college football. It's an honor and a privilege to play college football. And so, no, you don't have a right to do whatever you want. If you want to do whatever you want, then go do something else. Go play in your semi-pro league back home. So we need to do some things saying, listen, you don't have the wisdom at 18 that I do now as 70, because when I was 18, I would have been just like you. And I'm so glad that I'm not that way. I had coaches, then parents or people that made sure that I wasn't that way. And so I do think Marcus Freeman can bring a lot of value and to what they're doing at Notre Dame to say, hey, listen, we're playing great football. Our kids are making a lot of money, and our kids are going to class. They're getting real degrees. This is what we're doing, and this is why it's important to continue to do that. This is how we're able to convince kids to make a lot less money playing for us than they are somewhere else, because they understand the education, the opportunities are there for them. They can turn that $500,000 into a lot more money than the kid going down there majoring in basket weaving at an SEC school is going to make and be able to generate his $1 million. And it's not that player's fault. It's the system that he's going to be a part of that doesn't give a crap about the type of young men they're developing. You know how I know Kirby Smart doesn't care about really developing strong young men? I don't know Kirby Smart, never met Kirby Smart. It's because I have eyes. You don't go from a 2-year span where you have more players arrested than games you win, and you win a lot of games if you actually cared about that. You wouldn't. So I know he doesn't, because I watch his program. I watch what he loves his kids. He may love his players in the standpoint of he loves, in a football coach kind of way. There's loving your players, and then there's truly caring about your players in a way where you're willing to sacrifice the football piece if it means bettering them as men. And I don't believe he does that. And I got a lot of things I could say about that, but I'd like to not be sued. It's bad. So, I want him nowhere near this conversation. You go and sit down there and pipe down and make sure you don't get more court players arrested this year. How about that, coach? You go ahead and shut your pie hole. We're going to let the people that actually care about this. And I think current coaches, that's why I like Kirk Ferentz and Marcus Freeman are great examples, because Kirk is giving you that small school, old school mentality to it to say, listen, while you're out there trying to do right by Notre Dame and Alabama, let's not forget about the Iowas and the Nebraskas and the Wisconsins that are kind of getting screwed over in this whole deal. And Marcus Freeman can bring the perspective of, hey, we need to be advocating for young people to get a piece of this pie, but not at the expense of what type of young men are we developing and the academic piece. So I think there's all types of different pieces that go into this conversation that you need to kind of look at it. But it can't just be them either. I think they need to have former players part of this conversation as well. And recent former players and older players as part of this this reform discussion as well, not just coaches. Because coaches, no matter how much you try, you're still going to look at it as a coach. But that's what I think makes Marcus Freeman unique, because he's one of the few coaches that actually played in the 2000s and is also a big-time coach now at a very unique institution. I think he brings a very rare perspective that not a lot of guys play, because he actually, the other thing too is he actually played. Like Dan Lanning played around the same time. He played at William Jewell. Lincoln Riley was a college football player, but but I don't think he was any good. I think he was he? They played at Texas Tech, right? I don't think he did anything in college. I don't think he actually started at Texas Tech. I could be wrong on that, but I don't think he actually played as a player. So Marcus Freeman is one of the few that brings a modern, a younger coach, but also a guy that was a captain and an all Big Ten player in an era where money was a driver at a big time school that was competing for championships. So that's why I would definitely have Marcus Freeman in that conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. You and I see that the same. It needs to be a diverse group.
Yeah.
It can't just be a bunch of, you remember how good NCAA was back in the 70s type of people, but it also can't be, we're in the best age of college football type of people now. And it needs to be a good mixture of everybody. It needs to be a diverse group.
Yep.
Archer 452 on 3 reported a new college football playoff structure being discussed. 16 teams with guaranteed spots for 4 SEC, 4 Big Ten, 2 Big 12, 2 ACC, 1 group of 5, 3 at large, with SEC and Big Ten having play-in games, 3 versus 6, 4 versus 5. What are your thoughts?
That's not a playoff. That's an invitational. That's what it is. If you're guaranteeing certain spots for conferences, not knowing that those teams will actually be among the 16 teams in the country, that's an invitational, right? We see these in basketballs all the time. Hey, we're going to invite these 8 teams to come play in our invitational. It's got a lot more in common with the mid-season tournaments that you see in basketball than it does with a playoff. Because here's the deal. If 8 of the 16 best teams in the country are SEC teams, then you know what? Freaking put 8 SEC teams in there. If 8 of the best teams in the country from the Big Ten, then put 8 Big Ten teams in there. But if there's only 2 SEC teams that belong in there, then there should only be 2 SEC teams in there. How do you know in a 16-team playoff that 8 of the best teams in the country are guaranteed to be from the Big Ten and the SEC? Or that 12 of the best teams in the country are from those Power 4 leagues? How do you know that? You don't know that. So it's not really a playoff anymore. It's an invitational. The playoff should be the 16 best teams in the country. That's who it should be. And you start putting all these caveats in there and you say, well, hey, what about this and what about that? And it's not a playoff anymore. You're going to call it that, but it's an invitational. That's what it is. So, but if you're going to have automatic bids, then that's as good of an option as any. I just would say it's as good as option as any. I don't mind the play-in games. We've talked about that, Trev. I kind of like that idea. I would rather have that than Championship Saturday where the 1 and 2 got to play each other, and you're kind of being punished by being one of the. I mean, you've turned it into where you're actually kind of being punished if you're one of the two. If you're playing in the SEC title game or the Big Ten title game, you're almost kind of like being punished a little bit. SMU got punished a little bit for having a great regular season. They had to go play Clemson in the ACC title game. If they didn't have to play in the ACC title game, nobody's disputing if they should or shouldn't have been in the playoff. Of course they should. They were the best team in the ACC this year. And they go get beat by a 3-loss Clemson team, and now it's like, I don't think they should be in the playoffs. So, no, I don't. At 16, I have a little less of an issue with the automatic bids, Trev. I still don't like it, but I have less of an issue with it because now you're only taking half you're guaranteeing that they're going to have half of it, but you're not guaranteeing that they're going to be more than half. Because if the ACC is genuinely strong, then they'll get more of the at-larges. If the Big 12 is genuinely strong, then they'll get more of the at-larges, and it'll be fine. But I don't love it overall. But if you're going to have automatic bids, whatever, I just would have made it smaller. I'd have made it 3, 3, 2, 2, and then have more at-larges. That's what I would have done, but it's not a huge difference, in my opinion.
I'm okay with it being 4 as long as that's the max of teams that you can have in there.
Which it won't be.
No, I know, but
it won't be.
No, but if that's the case, if the SEC and the Big Ten are going to get 4, then I don't want 8-4 Iowa getting an at-large bid over a 10-2 type of ACC team maybe or something. It is what it is, man. I'm still trying to digest the 12-team playoff. If you want to go to 16, fine.
Because as soon as the first round goes down, it's just whine. This is why we need to go to 14. This is why I need to go to 16. It's like, can we just enjoy this for like 1 year, please?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, there's a disadvantage of teams that played in the quarter. How about that they just were better teams? Like, honestly, what team in the quarterfinals got beat that was actually better than the team that beat them? Arizona State was not better than Texas. Oregon was not better than Ohio State. Georgia was not better than Notre Dame. And Boise was not better than Penn State. Those 4 teams won because they were the 4 best teams. That's why they won. So, but, as soon as it happens, narrative. Before we even got to day 2 of the first round, we were dealing with that crap. This is why Indiana shouldn't have been in. This is why Alabama should have been in. Oh, shoot, they lost to Michigan. Well, this is why Ole Miss should have been in.
If this is going to be the format, you got to do away with automatic buys, or else you're just going to see even worse of this. I mean, if people were having an issue with the margin of victory of, Ohio State over Tennessee and SMU, falling the way they did to Penn State, it's going to get even worse if you're expanding it to 16.
Trev, let's be real about something. There's some years where a second ACC team has no business being in the college football playoff. And there will be years where a second Big 12 team has no business being in the college football playoff.
Mm-hmm.
And there's going to be years where the number 3 team gets completely screwed in one of those leagues because of whatever else. It just...
Oh, yeah, man. I mean, based on how this past conference championship worked with automatic bids, like what you're going to tell me Iowa State should have been in the college football playoffs?
Yeah.
Dude, they could have played any one of the top 12 teams and gotten beat by double digits. You know how I know that? They played Arizona State, probably the least strongest of the 4 main conference championship winners, and got demolished in their conference championship year. So if you want to expand it, that's fine, but then don't be upset. It's like, well, I thought that Georgia versus Kansas State was going to be closer. And it's like, did you?
Did you really?
Okay. Like, okay. It's like, I really thought Iowa State was going to hang in there with Notre Dame and South Bend. It's like, you did? No, you didn't.
If you thought Indiana had a shot to beat Notre Dame, you're out of your minds. Just like if you thought South Carolina had a shot to beat Notre Dame and South Bend, you're out of your mind. Just like if you thought Alabama was going to go up north. We wanted Alabama, remember? You and I were like, bring on Alabama because Notre Dame will smoke this Alabama team. Yes, 100%. Could you imagine, as crazy as that night was, and you and I were both there, we were both outside for most of the game. Could you imagine how nuts that environment would have been if it was Bama?
Oh.
But here's the thing, you'd have got a worse team. Indiana was a better team last year than Alabama. It just was. It just was. I don't think they will be this year, but they were last year. But there was a better chance. Like Benjamin Morrison's not walking into the office talking to Marcus Freeman about how the players are already looking ahead to Georgia if Bama's coming to town. You know what I mean? Like, whew.
It would have just been funny watching him go through warm-ups and snow pants and a yeah.
Why is the quarterback wearing a parka around his uniform? Oh my goodness. Ed 3 said by 2035 they'll be demanding a 64-team college football playoff. If ESPN thought that they could make more money on that, they would absolutely 1,000% do that. Yes. Absolutely. Yep.
Just move the regular season to like 8 games.
Yep.
Welcome to playoff October.
Yeah. Trev, I'll ask you this one from Brandon Gilbert. Thank you, Brandon. Are you either of you still playing CB 25, College Football 25? What would you like to see changed, added to College Football 2026?
Yeah, I'm still playing CB 25 or CFB 25, whatever it's called. Most of my changes are cosmetic. Like I wish you could edit the uniforms a little more. I hate that you can't change the numbers of players.
Yeah.
That bothers me. So like I'm playing a dynasty right now and CJ Carr is still number 12.
Yeah.
That bothers me. But outside of that,
it's not good in my game. Like,
nope.
Like
Leonard
I
Moore says
understand that
78 overall.
you're going to upgrade it in 2026, but when you're doing in-season upgrades and you realize this kid's really freaking good, he should no longer – you should be able to go in and edit that. I have to update it. You make me update it when there's changes. So why would you not then make changes to, hey, this guy's maybe better than we thought, instead of making me wait till 2026?
Yeah.
And I can't go edit him to make it. That's the other thing. I can't go – dude, if I want to go make all my players 99s, and I should be able to do that. And I don't think that I can, correct? Unless I just don't know how to do that.
No, you
Why
can't.
not? Why can't I? That's silly. If I'm just playing the computer, I should be able to do whatever I want. So yeah, I don't like that.
I would also like for all of the teams' jerseys to be at your disposal. It's a video game.
Yeah.
Why can't I play in the 2013 Shamrock Series jerseys?
Yeah, that's true. That'd be pretty cool.
You know,
I do like that they updated the options for jerseys as the season went on.
Yeah.
That was nice. The other thing I would like to be able to do, make the positions more realistic. This is going to sound terrible, but I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to say it. I'm going to get in trouble. It's going to be about what my secondary look like and why are all the 5-star corners look like me. I don't understand why that is in my game. It's a little weird. But they shouldn't. I want to be able to change the conferences names. That I want to be able to, if I want to go back to the Big 12 and if I want to go back to the Big 8 and the Southwest Conference, I should be able to do that. I should be able to. And you could also say, hey, look, give me that option for change conferences. I want to go back to 1988 affiliation. I want to go back to 2001 or something like that. That'd be pretty cool too.
It would be a cool feature. I know NBA does this, playing as historic teams.
Mm-hmm.
Like in 2K, you can play as the 95, 96 Bulls.
Nice.
We lost out on some really cool years of NCAA. I think it would be cool to have some of that. I would absolutely play as 2019 LSU.
Man.
Just to score 90 points a game.
You don't need to make everyone a 99. They already are.
Literally. I mean, I wish we could have done that, or I wish I could have played as Derrick Henry in one of these games and just go nuts.
It'd be cool if you could do a Legends mode where you could take great teams from the back in the day. I want a tournament with 99 or 2019 LSU. I want to have 2001 Miami. I want to have 93 Florida State or something. I want to have 95 Nebraska, 88 Notre Dame, 87. You know what I mean? Just have these great teams that you can have a tournament. You can have a tournament with. Look, I want to play 19 LSU as 21 Miami. That'd be fun. I think that'd be really cool. A Legends division or something like that. Take the I don't know, the 50 greatest teams ever and have them in there. That'd be pretty cool.
Oh, also, and I know that they're adding this already, so I'm happy they're changing it. Why were the coaches' names not in it?
Yeah.
That was stupid. I started Dynasty and I'm going to be Marcus Freeman. I'm not going to be myself. And
the coaching gear selections were also pretty lame.
Oh gosh, long baggy khakis and a windbreaker that looked like a
polo. I couldn't get Notre Dame. I can only have a navy blue with black stripe polo. I can't have, I can't get hats unless I pick certain heads. Let me pick the head I want and then put I actually wouldn't have been Marcus Freeman. I'd have still been me. But let me pick the face I want and then put a hat or visor on it as I see fit, or sunglasses or not as I see fit. That was kind of lame. They went a little cheap on that one. Yeah, went a little cheap on that one. Yeah.
Adam Garcia, what are your top 3 favorite Notre Dame memories?
Oh, wow. Oh, boy. There's been so many. I mean, we kind of had one this year, I think. Gosh, I mean, honestly, I'm going to have to go top 5 because 2 of my top 5 are this year. Beating Georgia this year was amazing. When Jaden Harrison returned that kickback for a touchdown, you knew then, holy crap, we're going to – and I'm watching it as a fan. I wasn't there. We're going to beat Georgia. You know what I mean? That was an amazing moment. And so was when Christian Gray picked off that pass against Penn State, you're like, oh my gosh, they're gonna come back and do this thing. I can't believe it. 93 Florida State was a big one for me. Obviously, I still remember as a kid Notre Dame beating Penn State, or West Virginia. But I still say the best moment of '88 was beating Miami. And I know the title game was almost kind of like, come on, guys, they're going to beat West. I know Major Harris is good, but guys, they're going to beat West Virginia. They've already beaten USC, Michigan, and Miami. They're not losing to West Virginia. It was almost like kind of anticlimactic. But the Miami game, Trev, I 10 years old, still remember that game. Still remember Florida State 1993. Yeah, those are some big ones for me. Those are probably my top ones.
Gosh, yeah. Top ones for me. I was at the UCLA Notre Dame game in 06 when Samardzija ran in the game-winning touchdown. We were in the end zone that they were coming to. It was me and my dad's first game I'd ever been to. So that one's up there for me. And then honestly, man, like just being in the living room watching the Penn State game with Lauren, and it was just me and her because we always like to have company over for big games, and we get snacks out and drinks out, and people are coming over to hang out. But that game was just her and I, and we were going nuts because that was the first game. I wish I could lie to you and say like, oh, I had no concern that Notre Dame was going to. I thought they were going to lose that game. I truly did. It was the first time I had felt that way since Northern Illinois' like last field goal in that game, where I kind of just sat down and I was starting to have a little bit of, I think they lose this game. Come back, they win it. Christian Gray's interception, that final drive, the game-winning field goal. I mean, that is a peak memory. That was crazy. Gosh, I'm trying to think. Outside of that, Zibby's punt return in 05 was awesome.
Have I ever told you the story about that, Trev?
Mm-hmm.
So I was coaching that day, and I think we were playing Averett, I think. And so I had my video guy because back you could plug I don't know if you can still do that, but you can plug the cable into the VCR, and then you could watch the basic cable channels on the VCR, and then they were all hooked up in our coach's office to the projectors. So I was like, look, bro, as soon as the game is over, I want you to come get this set up. So I'm shaking hands as fast as I've ever shaken hands, and I take off in a dead sprint to the coach's offices. And as I walked in and I'm catching my breath, USC's lining up the punt. They just punted the ball, and it was the Zibby punt return.
That's awesome.
I think that put them up like 17-7 or something like that. And I'm like, oh, let's go. I mean, I'm going nuts. So that's pretty awesome. But it's hard for me to – in Brady's touchdown run, I also got super fired up that game. But then it's hard for me to put those top five because I know I remember the end result. Kind of sucked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I get that. Oh, gosh. Yeah. The comeback in 06 against Michigan State, I really remember that.
Yeah.
I mean,
Everett's game winner against Stanford in 14 was pretty money as well.
Yeah, Ben Koyak on 4th and 11.
Yeah, and he's like scrambling around, and you're like, I didn't see Ben Koyak open until about the ball was halfway there.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't see him, and because I believe the press box at that time was still on the other side, so Koyak was like. If we were in the current press box, we would have seen through Everett to Koyak. It had been on the opposite field of us, but it was on the same side. So, like, if I'm looking at Everett, I couldn't see Koyak down here. So that was, some Fighting Mike said Stanford didn't see him either. Very true. Very true. Very true.
I remember the 2014 Notre Dame Florida State game. I mean, I got
was
asked
at that game. Yeah,
I got asked to leave a wings, etc.
Why?
Game. Because when they called pass interference,
oh, you lost it.
I stood up so fast and my chair flew back, and the manager came and he was like, "Hey, dude, you got to leave. Like, you've been pretty loud today, but you got." And since that point, I've never watched a Notre Dame game in public.
I get that. I totally get that.
Yeah, like we had already paid, we had already eaten. He's like, "Hey, dude, like you gotta go." And I was like, "All right, I get it.
I get that. The goal line stand against Stanford in 2012 was big. That was a big one. Some good one. There's so many. I mean, there's so many from the 80s. I still remember, '89, just the Virginia game just stood out to me because my dad was from Virginia, and still remember watching that game. There was a kickoff classic game. Yeah, there's a lot of those. I mean, I still remember some of Rocket's big kicks. The 2 kick returns against Michigan were huge. Yeah, there was a lot.
The IU game this past year with my dad was awesome. It was a rough week for us getting to go to that game and experience that together. Like, I will always remember that.
Because that's right when your grandfather had passed away. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he was a Notre Dame fan also. Yeah.
Kind of got that. I will remember that forever.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
Yeah. It's really cool. Very cool.
Question from Salty. Will the SEC fail to reach the national championship game again this season?
It's possible. I mean, I don't believe I have an SEC. I don't believe I have an SEC team in my top 3. I can't remember if I had Texas 3rd or 4th. Look, I think Texas has a shot to get there. I think Bama has a shot to get there. I never want to completely discount Georgia just because I think they're going to fade back. It's like I'm not ready to completely put their tombstone up. I'm not completely ready to write the Georgia Kirby Smart obituary. But no, there's a couple teams in the SEC that have a shot to get there this year. Absolutely. Absolutely. But as of right now, I'd say they have I think Notre Dame's got a shot to get there, and I think they got a better shot than anybody in the SEC. And I think the Big Ten still has a shot to get a team in there, but I won't be shocked if there's an SEC team in there, either Bama or Texas. I really won't.
I'm with you.
Yeah. A couple more before we get out of here, Trev. So I just wanted to, because we're gonna do 1 or 2 more here, and then I want to kind of, this is one I wanted to get to. I really liked this one.
Christopher Galloway. Which one of these quarterbacks would have thrived under this current coaching staff? Dane Christ, Brandon Wimbush, Everett Golson, or Phil Dracovic?
I think Everett probably would have benefited the most because I think he would have been a lot more mentally tough kid playing for Mike Denbrock and Marcus Freeman than he was under Brian Kelly.
Yeah.
I think he would have got the direction he needed. I think Phil Dracovic would have benefited a lot from playing under the staff. Honestly, all 4 of them would have benefited immensely from playing. I mean, I felt bad for Brandon to a degree. The coaching he got. Dane Chris got horrible coaching. Charlie Molnar might be the worst coach to ever coach in Notre Dame. As a football coach, he was awful. Awful. That's saying a lot when you consider my feelings on the D coordinator a few years later. He might have been the worst position coach that Notre Dame's ever had. Like, that's bad. No.
You know that defensive coordinator sitting at home right now.
Yes! Finally not last. And Brian Kelly can always be like, hey, as much as Driscoll hates me, he doesn't hate me any worse than Van Gorder. So I think that's part of the reason he hired and kept Van Gorder. He's like, look, I just want Driscoll to be pissed at somebody else.
I'm saying, he's like, dude, I gotta get BD off my back, man. He's like, it's like,
oh yes, Charlie Molnar is terrible, but I'd probably go Everett. Little quick super chat here, and then we'll get to our last question.
Yep. Super chat from Steve Rolfe. Thank you, Steve. If Zachary or Dallas Golden came in and won a starting secondary job, how shocked would you be?
Pretty surprised. It won a job. So not like somebody gets hurt, won a job. Look, they'd have to beat out arguably the best cornerback in all of football, a very veteran, talented nickel, or a guy that is incredibly talented who I've had people on the team tell me that the other corner, Christian Gray, might be the most talented cornerback on the roster. It's not a consensus in the program that Leonard Moore is definitely the best cornerback on the roster. Now, that doesn't mean that people don't think Leonard's – it's just that they think I think part of it is realized versus unrealized potential. Yeah. I think once you've realized your potential, then all of a sudden people start looking for the unrealized potential and kind of lifting that up a little bit. But I've been told that. Sean Davis has been told that. So that would surprise me. Now, that's only because of the talent that's there. Those guys in past years, like in 2024, I wouldn't have been shocked because I could have seen one of those guys beating out Jordan Clark for the nickel spot. In 2022, I'd have been a little bit more surprised because you had Benjamin and it was 23. Like they're not beating out Cam and Benjamin. 22, I would have not been shocked at all because they would have been competing with Benjamin to beat out Clarence Lewis. I kind of was expecting it. 2021 wouldn't have been surprised. 2020 wouldn't have been surprised. 2019 wouldn't have been overly surprised. You'd have to go back to 2018 when I would have been as surprised as I would be now. Like you beat out Troy Pride but even then the nickel situation in 2018 was a hot mess.
Sure was.
So one of them could have won that job, but yeah, it's just more so about the current talent so good that it's yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah. Get this one from Notre Dame Wine and Cheese.
After a ranking like ESPN dropped, how can we trust that rankings aren't manipulated by mental gymnastics to get whoever they want in the playoffs?
Well, because I don't think that ESPN's rankings has any impact on who's in the playoffs. Say whatever you want about the committee and mistakes they made, mistakes they didn't make. We have seen the committee go very different directions from what ESPN has said.
Yeah.
Like a lot. And I still remember the meltdown in 2020 when they came out with the first ranking and BYU wasn't in the top 10 and ESPN lost their minds and the committee never budged. Never budged. So the committee is influenced by things outside of just the best 12, I think. If we're being completely honest about this, I don't think they give a rip what ESPN has to say. ESPN analysts have to say about the playoff. I think the only thing that ESPN ultimately cares about is making money off the playoff. And we'd like to have some SEC teams in there. But that's just going to kind of happen anyway. So I'm not overly surprised by that. But no, I don't think ESPN impacts that much.
Especially not a preseason ranking. Like the committee's not sitting down in the second week in November being like, okay, what was ESPN's ranking on May 5th? Like I get where you're coming from.
Yeah.
But I don't think they carry that with much validity because now, like I hated the preseason rankings as much as the next person. But by the time the actual playoff committee meets to formulate the first playoff ranking, a lot of these preseason rankings will either be proven to be true or debunked.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, oh, yeah, we put LSU at 6. There's a chance that LSU could have 2 losses going into the month of November. Mm-hmm. Or they could be the team that reaches their ceiling. And so they're going to take the evidence on the field before they reference back to the ESPNs, the On3s, the USA Today.
I mean, the fact that none of Alabama, Ole Miss, or Miami or South Carolina made the playoffs last year is a perfect example of that.
Yep.
Not only did they keep Indiana in, they also kept SMU in. Mm-hmm. Like that's evidence right there that they didn't give a rip what ESPN had to say about who should be in.
Oh, yeah. I mean, shoot, they don't really even care about what the AP poll has to say once the playoff committee kind of formulates. Like, they're just like, yeah, they got their thing. It doesn't really matter until,
Agree. Before we end, I did want to bring this up from Pat O'Doherty. Pat says, hey, Brian, last week I mentioned my dad was in the hospital going through some serious things. He was able to come home a couple days ago and is slowly recovering. Thank you so much for your prayers and IB. Pat, my man, I can't think of a better way to send us into the weekend, man. And that is absolutely great news. We'll continue to pray for your dad, continue to keep us posted, but that is awesome news. Getting to come home on the mend. Hey, slow recovery is better than no recovery, my man. So that is great, great news. We are so happy to hear that. And I definitely appreciate you sharing that with us for sure. So send your dad our best. And we hope he gets through. So, Trev, that's going to do it for today's show, everybody. We may have a show tomorrow. We'll see. But that's why, Trev, not only after hitting the like button and making sure you're subscribed, steps 1 and 2, also hit that notification bell. Because when we do go live for a show, you'll see it. And then, hey, IB's going live for a show today. I want to be a part of that action. So you're definitely going to want to check that out. Everybody have an awesome weekend. If for some reason we don't see you this weekend, whether you don't join us or not, we'll be back Monday, 1 o'clock for our TCF show. Otherwise, have an amazing, amazing weekend. Thank you all so much for being with us this week. And don't forget, hey, my birthday's this weekend. And if you want to give me a birthday present, you know what you can do? Sign up for the message board at boards.irishbreakdown.com. I am going to politic for that. Otherwise, I'm going to be relaxing this weekend. Also, final piece. We have some mothers in our audience. that listen to the show. We have obviously a lot of sons and husbands and all those type of things in the show also. So if you are a mother watching our show, have a wonderful Mother's Day on Sunday. If you have a mother, if your wife's a mother, make sure you take care of them. Make sure you love on them. Make sure you show appreciation. Even if you do it year round, still do it on Sunday. Let them know how much they care about them, because mothers are amazing. I am the man I am today because of the mother. Partly, I have a great father, but I have a wonderful, loving, supportive mom who also is one to kick me in the butt when I needed it. And so I would not be here where I am today if it wasn't for my mother. I have an amazing sister also who's a mother. I want to wish her a happy birthday. She recently was in a competition, I don't know if it's like weightlifting kind of thing, but like a workout competition she was in. So I'm very proud of her, but I'm even more proud of the amazing mother she is. So I want to thank all those mothers, all you mothers out there. Have a great, great Mother's Day this weekend. We love you. We thank you. We thank you for being with us, and we'll see you again on the Irish Breakdown Podcast.